Chapter 3265. He Xian the instant he killed He Yu, Zhuowen stomped his right foot in the air and rushed towards Wen Rue, who was still in a daze. Wen Rue was already scared out of his wits. When he saw Zhuowen rushing towards him, he cried out loudly and retreated continuously. Unfortunately, the instant Wen Rue retreated, he felt the surrounding space-time distort and stagnate. When Rue realized that a long purple river had appeared around him unknowingly, this long purple river swept over and controlled the space-time around him, causing his speed to drop to the lowest in a short period of time, as though he was in slow motion. The instant when Rue stopped, Zhuowen had already arrived in front of Wen Rue and punched towards him. When Rue knew that he had already missed the opportunity to dodge, and could only muster all his strength to fight with Zhuowen. At the same time, he was also on guard against the thunder fire sword that was hidden in the dark. He knew very well that this Zhuowen was stronger than them, but he was not strong enough to kill them in one strike. He Yu died mainly because he was not on guard against the thunder fire sword that suddenly appeared. Boom! When Rue was slightly stronger than He Yu, when Zhuowen punched him, he retreated a few steps while when Rue retreated continuously with a groan. The instant when Rue retreated, the thunder fire sword streaked across the sky and flew towards Wen Rue's forehead. However, when Rue, who was already on guard, suddenly twisted his body and avoided his vital parts, the thunder fire sword only chopped off Wen Rue's legs. Your reaction is not bad, but under this Dragon Lord's sword, don't think that you can come out alive. Die for this Dragon Lord. Xiao He was astonished, but soon let out a burst of lewd laughter. She once again streaked across the sky and fought with Wen Rue. Wen Rue was already injured, and his legs were chopped off. His strength had dropped tremendously under the concentrated attacks of the Thunderfire sword. He was almost exhausted and retreated continuously. Zhuowen did not intervene in the battle between Thunderfire sword and Wen Rue. He knew that with Xiao He's power, it was more than enough to eliminate Wen Rue. Zhuowen looked around. He was now surrounded by dozens of Phoenix people, and He Xian, who had been repelled by him, had returned. He Xian's strength was the strongest among the three fire gods, so although he seemed to be in a sorry state just now, he actually did not suffer many injuries. A miserable cry rang out. Not far away, Xiao He flashed in the boundless domain of thunder and fire. She instantly pierced through Wen Rue's forehead, crushing his sea of consciousness and soul. She returned to Zhuowen's side. He Xian's eyes were filled with monstrous anger, but he still forced himself to calm down. He coldly stared at Zhuowen and said, "Zhuowen, that's enough. If you stop now, the Phoenix people can let bygones be bygones." "Stop!" "Ha!" Zhuowen laughed. The purple river that surrounded him instantly expanded like an angry dragon, turning into layers of purple waves that surged into the sky. Then it swept towards the Phoenix people around him. At the same time, Zhuowen used the torch dragon's eyes. In his eyes, everything around him was moving in slow motion. In his eyes, the Phoenix people were full of flaws. Zhuowen was in the domain of the purple river. His body flickered like a ghost, and he held the thunder fire sword in his right hand. He appeared in front of a Phoenix people expert and stabbed his sword, accurately landing on the forehead of this Phoenix people expert. This Phoenix people expert wanted to dodge, but he soon realized that it was all in vain. This sword had sealed off all his escape routes, forcing him to take this sword head-on. Poof! This Phoenix people expert wielded his divine weapon to block Zhuowen's sword, but he soon realized that his block was like a piece of paper. Zhuowen's sword flashed away, and the sword light sank into his forehead. Blood splattered everywhere. This Phoenix people's eyes dimmed as he fell from the sky, turning into a lifeless corpse. Zhuowen's body flashed and flashed in the purple river like lightning. Every time he flashed, the sword light would spread and take the life of a Phoenix people. He Xian looked at the fallen experts of the Phoenix clan, his eyes filled with rage. He chased after Zhuo Wen with all his might, but in the domain of the Purple River, time and space were constantly distorted, hindering him from moving forward. He couldn't catch up with Zhuo Wen at all. He could only watch from the back as the subordinates he had brought were slaughtered. Zhuo Wen, fight me face to face if you have the guts. What kind of ability is it to fight against them? He Xian was anxious and roared at Zhuo Wen. Zhuo Wen just sneered and ignored He Xian. He was still flashing in the Purple River, reaping the lives of the Phoenix people around him. When Zhuo Wen stabbed the last Phoenix people expert with the Thunderfire sword, the Purple River suddenly rolled up 100 feet high wave, crushing down on He Xian below. He Xian, it's your turn now. Zhuo Wen stood on the purple wave and looked down at He Xian below. The murderous intent in his eyes was monstrous and terrifying. He Xian's face was pale. At this moment, Zhuo Wen's aura was too terrifying. He felt a trace of fear in his heart. Boom, boom, boom. The purple wave suddenly crushed down and drowned He Xian in an instant. He Xian roared to the sky and stirred up all the strength in his body to form a terrifying energy spiral, barely resisting the surging purple wave. Bang! All of a sudden, a hole was torn open in the waves, and a sharp sword chi rushed out. He Xian looked and saw Zhuo Wen holding the Thunderfire sword and slashing at him. The Thunderfire energy turned into the most condensed and sharp attack, and together with the surrounding Purple River, it blasted on the energy spiral in front of He Xian. Boom! The energy spiral didn't last long and was crushed into countless pieces by the terrifying double energy. Before He Xian could react, his chest was pierced by the Thunderfire sword and nailed to the ground. Countless purple waves receded, and Zhuo Wen stepped out and stepped on He Xian's chest. He Xian's face was pale. He took a deep breath and asked with a gloomy look, "Why didn't you kill me?" He Xian knew that if Zhuo Wen had used the Thunderfire sword to target his glabella, his divine soul would have been annihilated by now. But Zhuo Wen didn't, and it was obvious that the former did it deliberately. "I have a question for you. As long as you answer it well, I'll spare your dog life." Zhuo Wen said indifferently. The death intent in He Xian's eyes faded a lot. He stared at Zhuo Wen with wide eyes, and after seeing that Zhuo Wen was not lying, he nodded. "Ask away. As long as I know, I will answer you. Is there a human called Mu Qinxue imprisoned in the Phoenix Purgatory?" Zhuo Wen asked with a fervent gaze. He Xian narrowed his eyes, looked deeply at Zhuo Wen, and asked tentatively, "Did you come to the Phoenix people for that human called Mu Qinxue?" However, just as He Xian finished speaking, Zhuo Wen stomped his face to the ground. "Right now, I'm the one asking you, not you. You just need to answer me," Zhuo Wen said coldly. He Xian's eyes were filled with humiliation. He thought for a moment and said, "Yes, there is indeed a human imprisoned in the Phoenix Purgatory. I don't know if she is called Mu Qinxue." Zhuo Wen's gaze softened, and he continued, "Then can you release the person in the Phoenix Purgatory?" Chapter 3266. The news has been exposed. Only the Grand Elder can release the prisoners from the Phoenix Purgatory? Zhuo Wen frowned. Before he entered the Phoenix people, he already knew from Yuefu that the Grand Elder and Third Elder had left the Phoenix people for some important matter. Zhuo Wen didn't care about why the Grand Elder and Third Elder had left the Phoenix people. His main concern now was Mu Qinshue's situation. "Humph, then I'll destroy this Phoenix Purgatory." Zhuo Wen snorted coldly. Carrying He Xian, he instantly arrived in front of the Phoenix Purgatory. Zhuo Wen had killed most of the Phoenix race's upper echelon experts in one breath. Now, many of the Phoenix race's clansmen avoided Zhuo Wen like the plague. Who would dare to stop him? The Phoenix Purgatory was a tower burning with black flames. The surface of the tower was sealed, and there wasn't even a window. Zhuo Wen didn't even see the existence of an entrance at the bottom of the tower. Boom! Zhuo Wen threw He Xian to the ground and punched the Phoenix Purgatory. Boom! Countless black flames exploded and spread from Zhuo Wen's fist to his entire body like maggots in a tarsal bone. Zhuo Wen groaned and retreated. He wanted to extinguish the black flames on his body, but found that the black flames were extremely difficult to extinguish. The surface of his body was almost burnt. Zhuo Wen could only use the profound creation mysterious light. It took a lot of effort to extinguish the black flames on his body. He stopped, and the injuries on his body healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. However, his eyes were filled with shock. What was the black flames on the surface of the Phoenix Purgatory? They were so strange and difficult to deal with. He Xian, who had been thrown aside, looked at Zhuo Wen in disbelief. The black flames on the surface of the Phoenix Purgatory were the flames of the Phoenix. They were immortal and could burn forever. Even if he was entangled by the black flames, he would have to pay a great price to extinguish them. However, Zhuo Wen seemed to be able to extinguish the flames easily, and he didn't seem to be injured at all. Thinking of this, He Xian looked at Zhuo Wen with more fear and respect. Zhuo Wen took out the Ho-I Godly Arrow and the Ho-I Godly Bow. He pulled the bowstring of the Ho-I Godly Bow to its limit. Instantly, the Ho-I Godly Arrow soared into the sky with terrifying power, slamming into the surface of the Phoenix Purgatory. But what made Zhuo Wen frown was that the Ho-I Divine Arrow's power only left a shallow mark on the surface of the Phoenix Divine Arrow. After putting away the Ho-I Godly Bow and Ho-I Godly Arrows, Zhuo Wen gave up on the idea of destroying the Phoenix Purgatory. Even Ho-I's Godly Arrow had only left a very shallow mark on the surface of the tower. With his current abilities, it was basically impossible for him to destroy such a sturdy structure. Do you know the way to enter the Phoenix Purgatory? Zhuo Wen was unwilling to give up. This Phoenix Purgatory was too strange. He couldn't destroy it at all. And he was unwilling to leave this place just like that. After all, Mu Qinxue was in the Phoenix Purgatory. He had to go in and take a look. Otherwise, he would be unwilling to leave. He Xian's eyes flickered as he hurriedly said, "It's very simple to enter the Phoenix Purgatory. You just need to leave a prisoner's mark on your hand, and you can enter." As soon as He Xian finished speaking, his face was immediately stomped into the ground by Zhuo Wen. "You want me to be a prisoner of the Phoenix people?" Zhuo Wen said coldly. He Xian continued to struggle and hurriedly explained, "No, I'm just telling you the way to enter the Phoenix Purgatory. What I need is a way to enter without using a prisoner's mark." Zhuo Wen said indifferently. He had learned about the Phoenix Purgatory from Yuefu. He knew that the prisoners that the Phoenix people had captured for countless years were all ferocious existences. He knew very well that since the Phoenix people could suppress these ferocious prisoners, they must have a way to control them. The prisoner's mark was probably a way for the Phoenix people to control them. If he agreed to imprint the prisoner's mark, it would be really bad. He Xian was silent. "If you don't say it, you'll die immediately." Zhuo Wen's eyes were like torches, and his voice was filled with killing intent. He Xian finally panicked. He hurriedly said, "I'll say it. Please spare my life. Lord Zhuo." Zhuo Wen raised his foot and looked at He Xian coldly. "Then quickly say it." He Xian stood up in a sorry state. His eyes flickered as he said, "The upper echelons of the Phoenix people are the 2 protectors of Xuanhua, the 3 elders, and the 12 fire gods. Although there are rumors of the Phoenix Master's existence, the Phoenix Master has not appeared for too long. We all thought that the Phoenix Master had fallen. Our blood essence can open the undying bird purgatory once, but using blood essence to open the purgatory has a huge price. If that's the case, then help me open it. But now is not the time. Zhuowen's eyes were cold. After he finished speaking, he said to Saiku, who had followed him, "Brother Saiku, thank you for bringing me into the Phoenix people. What happens next has nothing to do with you. You can leave the Phoenix people first." As he spoke, Zhuowen took out a divine pill and handed it to Siko. He said, "This is a complete 7 transformation curse pill. The ones I gave you are all half-finished products. They can only delay the curse power in your body. However, this complete 7 transformation curse pill can completely eradicate the curse power in your body." Saiku's eyes were filled with excitement. He took the divine pill and knelt in front of Zhuowen. He said gratefully, "Thank you, Lord Zhuo. Thank you. You deserve it. Go quickly." Zhuowen said with a smile. Saiku solemnly cupped his fists at Zhuowen and left the Phoenix people. Under Zhuowen's gaze, no one in the Phoenix people dared to stop Saiku. Moreover, Zhuowen also knew that once Saiku left the Phoenix people, with Saiku's powerful talent, it would be extremely difficult for the Phoenix people to find Saiku in the future. After Saiku left, Zhuowen sealed Hexian's freedom and began to set up a terrifying array around the Phoenix Purgatory. This time, Zhuowen's speed of setting up the grand array was extremely fast. Since he wanted to enter the Phoenix Purgatory, he naturally had to ensure his own safety. That was the most important thing. At this moment, in Phoenix Blood City, Feng Bumming and the others, who were trapped in the 12 Divine Fiends array, all had ugly expressions. They had received news from the Phoenix people that the main city of the Phoenix people had been attacked. Moreover, the ancestral temple in the main city had been destroyed, and the hidden Phoenix blood pool was also taken away. What made Feng Bumming and Xian even more incredulous was that the initiator of all this was actually Zhuowen. What's going on? That Zhuowen was in the Bloodshed Tea House in Phoenix Blood City. When did he run to the Phoenix people? Feng Bumming found it unbelievable. Hexian's face was cold as he looked at Yuefu beside Feng Bumming and said, "Bumming, it seems that we have been fooled. The Zhuowen hiding in the Bloodshed Tea House should be an insignificant doppelganger of that Zhuowen. This clone merely borrowed the power of the 12 Overseer Divine Wraith formation to delay us, while his actual body circled around to launch a sneak attack on our Phoenix clan. All of this should have been planned by that bitch and Zhuowen." As soon as Hexian said this, Shuehua and the other experts of the Phoenix people looked at Yuefu with unfriendly gazes. Yuefu's delicate body trembled as she quickly approached Feng Bumming and said, "Bumming, don't listen to their nonsense. How could I give you false information? The one who ambushed the Phoenix people should be someone else." Chapter 3267. 3 Great Arrays. Bumming. Yuefu looked at Feng Bumming in disbelief and hurriedly said, "Yuefu, whether you did it intentionally or not, you did help Zhuowen and gave us false information." Feng Bumming's gaze was as cold as ice. With a wave of his sleeve, a flame entered Yuefu's forehead. Yuefu didn't even make a sound before she fell to the ground and died. "Guardians, how long will it take for this great array to be broken?" Feng Bumming asked anxiously after erasing Yuefu's soul. "If we work together, it should take 3 days. Hexian said in a deep voice, "Then try to be as fast as possible. I'll contact the Phoenix Master now and inform the Phoenix people of everything that happened." Feng Bumming took out his communication jade talisman and sent a message. "The Phoenix Master's whereabouts are mysterious, and he hasn't been in the clan for a long time. Are you sure he can receive your message?" Shuehua said with a frown, "That's the only way now. After all, We can't rush back yet. Even if we break this great array and rush back, it will take 6 to 7 days. During this time, Zhuowen might have already escaped. Feng Buming said, helplessly, wait, He Xian sent us a message saying that Zhuowen's purpose in coming to the Phoenix people is for a human called Mu Chenxue. Right now, Zhuowen is trying to enter the Phoenix Purgatory. He Xian took out his communication jade talisman and glanced at it before hurriedly saying, Mu Chenxue? This kid is actually looking for Mu Chenxue. Well done. If this kid enters the Phoenix Purgatory, that would be the best. Once he enters, he won't be able to come out. Feng Buming sneered. It seems that Zhuowen doesn't know that Mu Chenxue has been taken away by the Grand Elder and the others. This is for the best. After this kid enters the Phoenix Purgatory, we won't be in a hurry. There's plenty of time. Shuehua nodded. 5 days later, Zhuowen set up the last Transcendence Grand Formation, looking exhausted. In these 5 days, Zhuowen had successively set up 3 grand heaven-grade Grand Formations. They were the 12 Divine Fiends Grand Formation, the 10 Directional Cloud Annihilation Grand Formation, and the Heavenly Law, Heavenly Toad, Limitless Grand Formation. Moreover, Zhuowen had strengthened all 3 of these great Heaven Ascension formations. Their power was now comparable to that of a great Heaven Ascension formation. These 3 Heaven Ascension Grand Formations were closely linked and placed around the Phoenix Purgatory. They complemented each other, and a slight change in one part could affect the whole situation. Their power was comparable to that of a Heaven Ascension Grand Formation in the late stage. Zhuowen believed that no matter how many mid-stage Heavenly Ascension Realm fighters came, they would not be able to break this formation. Even if a late-stage Skirich Lord came, it would be difficult for him to break this formation in a short period of time. On the other hand, He Xian was trembling with fear as he watched from the side. He could clearly feel the terror of these 3 grand formations. As long as he entered the range of these grand formations, he would not be able to hold on for long before he was blasted into pieces. Zhuowen lifted He Xian and released the shackles on him. He said, now open the Phoenix Purgatory. He Xian did not dare to disobey. In these 5 days, he had seen how terrifying Zhuowen was. He knew that he was far from being a match for this freak. In front of this person, he would be courting death if he resisted. He Xian bit his finger, then pressed his palm against the wall of the tower that was covered in black flames. Zhuowen was surprised to find that the black flames seemed to have a mind of their own. They did not attack He Xian. Instead, they separated into a gap big enough for a palm to fit in. The moment He Xian's palm pressed against the wall, his blood essence was crazily absorbed. Dense blood-red lines appeared on the black surface of the tower. When the blood-red lines covered the entire tower, He Xian's face was pale as he withdrew his hand. He staggered and almost fell to the ground. Zhuowen did not pay attention to He Xian. Instead, he silently observed the changes in the tower. He saw that the blood-red lines on the surface of the tower began to gather together rapidly. Finally, they gathered at the bottom of the tower, in front of Zhuowen, forming a blood-red vortex that could fit a person. Zhuowen, how dare you run amok in the Phoenix people and kill our Phoenix people? At this moment, outside the main city of the Phoenix people, a thunderous voice sounded. Zhuowen raised his head and looked outside the main city. He saw a flying divine artifact rushing towards him. On the deck of the flying divine artifact, Feng Buming was standing at the front. On both sides of Feng Buming were the 2 guardians of Xuanhua. Feng Buming's eyes were filled with blazing killing intent as he stared fixedly at Zhuowen. He wished he could appear beside Zhuowen right now and kill him. Unfortunately, Zhuowen would not give Feng Buming this opportunity. Idiot! Zhuowen only said this sentence before he stepped into the blood-red vortex. Soon, the blood-red vortex disappeared. However, the moment the blood-red vortex disappeared, Zhuowen threw out a formation flag. The moment the formation flag landed outside the Phoenix Purgatory, the three formations that Zhuowen had carefully set up were immediately activated. A terrifying, killing intent soared into the sky, and waves of formation energy swept out like waves. He Xian, who was still beside the undying bird Purgatory, had a look of fear in his eyes. He screamed as he was drowned by the energy of the array. His entire body collapsed into countless blood mist, and he couldn't be more dead. When Feng Bumming and the others rushed to the Phoenix Purgatory, the last thing they saw was He Xian being crushed into powder by the three heavenly level killing formations. Ah, Zhuowen, Feng Bumming, swear that I will peel off your skin, pull out your tendons, and pull out your soul. I will burn you in the divine fire forever and suffer all the pain in the world. I will make you suffer a fate worse than death. Feng Bumming stopped in front of the three great formations. He could only watch helplessly as He Xian died in front of them. The anger in his eyes was almost surging. The two guardians of the profound fire and the 7 fire gods behind them were also furious. This Zhuowen was too arrogant. He dared to kill He Xian in front of them. This was a ruthless slap to their faces. Shuo, break the formation with me. He Xian did not say anything, but the killing intent on his body was the strongest among all of them. He called out to Shuehua and exploded with all his strength, attacking the three great formations in front of him. Shuehua naturally did not want to fall behind. He and He Xian cooperated very well. Together, they exploded with terrifying energy. However, the moment the two of them attacked the great formations, it was like a stone sinking into the sea. There was no movement at all. Instead, from the three great formations, there was a surging wave of counterforce energy. It bombarded the two of them, causing them to fly backward and crash onto the ground in a sorry state. Puchi, the two guardians of the profound fire, spat out a mouthful of blood at the same time. Their faces were pale. What kind of great formation is this? How can it be so powerful? Feng Bumming calmed down, but his eyes were full of shock. The two guardians of the profound fire were experts in the middle stage of the Master of Heaven. They were seriously injured by the counterforce of the formation. These are 3 Master of Heaven level great formations, and they complement each other. The two of us can't do anything to them at all. I'm afraid only the Phoenix Master can break this formation. Shuehua's eyes were filled with shock and anger. The Phoenix Master has received my news. He is a guest at the Sorcerer Tribe. He should be back soon. Feng Bumming said calmly, "The Phoenix Master is back. That's great." The two guardians of the profound fire and the other 7 fire gods were surprised when they heard this. Chapter 3268, Black Heart Sea of Fire. The moment Zhuowen entered the Phoenix Purgatory, he immediately felt a cold energy attack him. He opened his eyes and immediately found that what appeared in front of him were endless black flames. These flames were not hot at all. Instead, they were filled with the coldness and gloominess of a world of ice and snow. Around the black flames was a passageway that was not very wide. This passageway was very deep, and no one knew where the end was. Zhuowen unleashed his Panga's sacred body. His entire body emitted a crystal-clear light as he resisted the black flames that were rushing towards him. "It's so cold." The moment the black flames invaded his body, Zhuowen shivered and felt a bone-chilling cold. At the same time, the black flames spread all over his body and kept burning. Although it gave him a cold feeling, his body was burned black by the flames. It looked extremely terrifying. Fortunately, Zhuowen's Panga sacred body was extremely hard and unusual. In addition, he had a strong recovery ability, so he resisted the powerful black flames and walked into the depths of the passageway. After about half an hour, Zhuowen walked out of the end of the passageway and found that the line of sight in front of him was many times wider. There's actually a small world inside the Phoenix Purgatory. Zhuowen looked ahead and found that it was a boundless wasteland. However, there was an endless sea of black flames burning on the wasteland. The entire world was filled with a cold and strange atmosphere. Zhuowen jumped into the wasteland and was immediately drowned by the surrounding sea of black flames. Sizzle! Zhuowen could clearly hear that his body was being burned in the sea of black flames. The sound it made was rather ear-piercing. He found that the flames in the sea of black flames were much more terrifying and powerful than the black flames in the passageway. He could barely resist them. While resisting the black flames, Zhuowen's eyes were rather blank. He was not familiar with the small world inside the Phoenix Purgatory at all. He only saw that it was filled with a sea of fire, and he could not even identify the direction. Suddenly, Zhuowen saw a figure crawling with difficulty several hundred meters in front of him. When he got closer, he realized that it was a charred human figure. The strange thing was that even though the human figure was clearly charred, its entire body was trembling violently as if it was suffering from a severe cold. From the charred silhouette, Zhuowen could tell that it was a man. Save me! The charred figure struggled to raise its head, looked at Zhuowen, and let out a pleading sound. Zhuowen helped him up. He placed his right hand on his shoulder and used the profound creation mysterious light. The power of the profound light covered his entire body like a thin veil, blocking the surrounding black flames. Although it was barely able to block them, it made his situation much better. Zhuowen took out a divine healing pill and fed it to the person. The moment this person saw the healing pill, his eyes lit up and he couldn't wait to consume it. The miraculous thing was that after consuming the divine pill, the charred skin on the surface of this person began to gradually recover and dark blue scales grew out. Fellow Taoist, we can't stay in this sea of black flames for long. Take me out of the sea of black flames first. After this person recovered a little, his speech became much clearer. He pointed in a direction and said to Zhuowen. Zhuowen nodded and supported this person. He summoned his flying divine tool, but was quickly stopped by this person. Fellow Taoist, this is the Phoenix Purgatory. You can't use flying divine tools, and you can't fly here. Otherwise, flames that are even more terrifying than this sea of black flames will fall from the sky. At that time, no one will be able to save you. This person hurriedly said. Hearing this, Zhuowen was surprised. He put away his flying divine tool, carried this person on his back, and quickly rushed in the direction that this person pointed. This person was lying on Zhuowen's back, but he was getting more and more alarmed. The sea of black flames was an extremely terrifying and dangerous place in the Phoenix Purgatory. Very few people could last more than half an incense stick of time in the sea of black flames. And now, Zhuowen, who was carrying him on his back, was not only running steadily in the sea of black flames, but he also didn't seem to be affected by the corrosion of the black flames here. Not long after, Zhuowen saw a high ground not far in front of him. This high ground was generally dozens of feet higher than the wasteland he was in. Although the high ground was also filled with black flames, relatively speaking, it was much thinner than this place. And the low ground here, compared to the high ground, looked a bit like an endless sea of black flames. After Zhuowen jumped onto the high ground, he clearly felt that the surrounding black flames were much weaker. If it was said that he was barely able to resist in the sea of black flames, then on this high ground, these black flames gave him the feeling of scratching an itch. Zhuowen put down the person on his back and only then did he realize that this person's injuries had already recovered by quite a bit. Dark blue scales had grown all over his body. Seeing this person, Zhuowen was clearly stunned. This was because he was very familiar with this person. He was actually from the mermaid race. Speaking of which, he had killed many mermaids in the celestial battlefield back then. No, he quickly calmed down. This mermaid's cultivation could only be considered average, probably only a half-step Genesis Lord. This person in front of him should have been captured by the Phoenix people long ago and thrown into this Phoenix purgatory. He probably didn't know what Zhuowen had done to the mermaid race. Thank you for saving my life, fellow Taoist. My name is Wu Rui, and I'm from the mermaid race. May I know your name, fellow Taoist? This mermaid hurriedly cupped his fists toward Zhuowen, his eyes filled with gratitude and respect. Zhuowen's aura was stronger than his, and he guessed that he should be a Genesis Lord. He was naturally extremely grateful that such an expert was willing to save him. Zhuowen nodded, just as he was about to ask this mermaid about the Phoenix Purgatory. He couldn't help but frown. This was because he saw two figures walking out from behind a huge rock in front of him. Sacred Marten tribe. These two figures were a man and a woman. These two people looked almost exactly the same as humans. The only difference was that they had marten tails behind them. Zhuowen immediately thought of the Sacred Marten tribe. These two people from the Sacred Marten tribe weren't weak. They were both early-stage Genesis Lords and were much stronger than Wu Rui. When Zhuowen saw these two people from the Sacred Marten tribe, he immediately knew that Wu Rui had been chased into the sea of black flames by these two people. If he hadn't saved him in time, Wu Rui would definitely have died in the sea of black flames, just like that. Wu Rui, you actually managed to come out alive after escaping into the sea of black flames. Your dog life is not small. The man from the Sacred Marten tribe walked over slowly and stared coldly at Wu Rui. After he finished speaking, he looked at Zhuowen with a slightly fearful gaze. Fellow Taoist, we are from the Tianluo sect. I'm sure you know the name of the Tianluo sect. If you don't want to die, it's best that you don't interfere in our matters. Now scram! After saying that, the man and woman completely ignored Zhuowen and headed straight for Wu Rui. It seemed like they believed that this person wouldn't cause any trouble after mentioning the Tianluo sect. Zhuowen's gaze was cold. He originally didn't want to cause any trouble. He couldn't be bothered with the grudges between this man and Wu Rui. He only wanted to understand the region of the Phoenix Purgatory. He could ask Wu Rui and these two people. However, this man from the Sacred Marten tribe had offended him and even asked him to scram. Did he think that Zhuowen was an idiot? I've already given the divine medicine to the sect master. Why does the sect master still want to kill me? Wu Rui slowly retreated, his eyes filled with unwillingness. Blame yourself for knowing too much. That divine medicine is very important. The sect master doesn't allow anyone to leak it. He only believes in dead people. Therefore, your death is the best choice. The man and woman surrounded Wu Rui from the left and right. Their voices were filled with mockery and laughter. Unfortunately, their laughter quickly froze as two streaks of sword light shot out from between their brows. Chapter 32:69. In Great Wu Rui was stunned. Then he saw the sword light that pierced through the man and woman land beside Zhuowen, revealing two divine swords. He hurriedly knelt on the ground and thanked him. Thank you, Lord Zhuo, for your help. Zhuowen waved his hand and said, It's just a small matter. Now, I want to ask you, in this undying bird purgatory, have you heard of Mu Qinxue? At this point, Zhuowen's expression was slightly nervous. Wu Rui's gaze was blank. He shook his head and said, I have never heard of Mu Qinxue. At least, I have never heard of this name in the outer layer of the purgatory. This undying bird purgatory is divided into an outer layer and an inner layer? Zhuowen asked. Wu Rui's gaze was strange. He did not expect Zhuowen to not know this. Could it be that the latter was a newcomer who had just entered the undying bird purgatory? Lord Zhuo, you are right. The undying bird purgatory is indeed divided into an outer layer and an inner layer. The outer layer is very large. Normally, the Phoenix people would imprison criminals who have not committed serious crimes in the outer layer. The outer layer is also the place with the most criminals. These criminals gather in a canyon where the black flames are the weakest. They occupy the territory in the canyon and form three major forces. These three forces are the Tianluo sect, the Bloodrock sect, and the Bailuo sect. The two people who chased after me just now were from the Tianluo sect. The inner layer is the deepest part of the undying bird purgatory. It is used to imprison criminals who have committed serious crimes in the eyes of the Phoenix people. The area is much smaller than the outer layer. Moreover, the black flames in the inner layer are even more terrifying than the black heart sea of flames. Most of the criminals imprisoned in the inner layer could not withstand the black flames and died. Wu Rui had just finished speaking when Zhuowen grabbed Wu Rui's shoulder and said excitedly, "Tell me the location of the inner layer." Lord Zhuo, you are not planning to enter the inner layer, are you? I advise you to give up on this idea. Wu Rui said. Why? Zhuowen calmed down and asked in a deep voice. Between the outer layer and the inner layer of the undying bird purgatory is the undying bird's soul. The undying bird purgatory suppresses the undying bird is an ancient divine beast. It is said that it was defeated by the ancestor of the Phoenix people's ancestors and was trapped here. In ancient times, this divine beast, undying bird, was a terrifying expert at the peak of Lord Tongtian. Although only a trace of its soul is left, it still has the power of Lord Tongtian. Many undyings, the undying bird's souls as undying bird, S-birds, undying, 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 undyings, undyings, and undyings, undying. If you, UNS got, undying if you, Rue, you. It's too dangerous. Wu Rue advised. Wu's to the uni, comma, s. Zhuowen's 4. Wu Rui's gaze flickered, and he said, Lord Zhuo, how about this? Follow me back to the canyon first. The bird is. Although I've never heard of the person you're looking for, it doesn't mean others don't know. Maybe the person you're looking for is in the outer layer and not the inner layer. Wouldn't you be going to the inner layer for nothing? And it's so dangerous. Zhuowen frowned slightly. He had a nagging feeling that Wu Rui was eager for him to enter the canyon colony. However, on second thought, he felt that Wu Rui was right. There were quite a number of prisoners in the outer layer. It was impossible for Wu Rui to know everyone. Lead the way. Zhuowen nodded. Seeing that Zhuowen had agreed, Wu Rui's eyes lit up with excitement, and he quickly led the way. The bird purgatory was far from the black heart sea of flames. The two of them walked for half a day before finally arriving at the bird purgatory. The bird purgatory was surrounded by black flames. It was hundreds of feet tall and looked quite majestic. After entering the bird purgatory, Zhuowen clearly felt that the flames in the bird purgatory were much weaker than the outside world. The uncomfortable feeling in his body completely disappeared in the bird purgatory. Wu Rui, you're very bold. You've clearly been chased out of the bird purgatory, but you still dare to come back. The instant Zhuowen and Wu Rui entered the bird purgatory, 7 or 8 people immediately surrounded them. The person in the lead was a middle-aged man with yellow hair growing on his face. It was impossible to tell what tribe he was from. However, this middle-aged man's aura was much stronger than the Sacred Marten tribe couple from before. He was actually a mid-stage Genesis lord. Wu Rue glanced at Zhuowen beside him, and he was clearly much more confident. He stepped forward and said, "Ing Zhuo, I, Wu Rue, am loyal and devoted to the Tianluo sect, and I'm even more loyal to the sect master. You've tried to kill me time and time again. What's the meaning of this?" Ing Zhuo looked at Wu Rue in surprise. In his impression, Wu Rue was a cowardly fellow who didn't even dare to let out a fart in front of him. Today, he actually dared to talk back to him. Also, he remembered that he had sent a Sacred Marten tribe couple to pursue him. With their strength, killing Wu Rue was more than enough. However, Wu Rue had returned alive, while the Sacred Marten tribe couple had disappeared without a trace. This made Ing Zhuo's gaze fall on Zhuowen, who was beside Wu Rue. He believed that given Wu Rue's cultivation, he was simply no match for the Sacred Marten tribe couple. It was very likely that someone had helped Wu Rue. This person was undoubtedly the young man who had returned with Wu Rue. Zhuowen looked at Wu Rue coldly. He finally understood why the latter had been so eager to invite him to the bird Purgatory Valley. It turned out that he wanted him to be Wu Rue's free fighter. Zhuowen sneered in his heart. He had saved Wu Rue's life from a sea of black flames, and even helped Wu Rue get rid of the Sacred Marten tribe couple. This was already considered extremely benevolent. However, not only was Wu Rue not grateful, but he actually wanted to use him as a free fighter. This made Zhuowen have no good impression of Wu Rue at all. Zhuowen looked at Ing Zhuo and said indifferently, "I have no interest in participating in the matters of the Tianluo sect." When Zhuowen said this, Wu Rue's expression changed slightly. He knew that Zhuowen was unhappy that he wasn't standing on his side. Ing Zhuo looked at Zhuowen with some wariness. He could sense that Zhuowen's aura was very powerful. It was at least the aura of a late-stage god of creation. This person's cultivation was even more powerful than his, so Ing Zhuo naturally didn't want to provoke him. Now that he heard that Zhuowen wasn't willing to interfere in the matters of the Tianluo sect, Ing Zhuo's eyes lit up. He cupped his fists at Zhuowen and immediately ordered his subordinates behind him, "Take down Wu Rue." Wu Rue hurriedly retreated. Unfortunately, Ing Zhuo personally attacked and slapped him into the ground, causing him to almost vomit blood. Several subordinates immediately restrained Wu Rue and restrained him. "Zhuowen, you ungrateful bastard. The reason I gave you the remaining blood rain yellow sand leaf is so that you can be my bodyguard and protect my life. Previously, you helped me kill the Sacred Marten tribe couple who were chasing after me. Now that I've been captured by Ing Zhuo, you want to stand by and do nothing because you're afraid of the power of the Tianluo sect. You're simply shameless." Wu Rue shouted as he glared at Zhuowen with hatred in his eyes. Zhuowen was stunned. When had he ever accepted Wu Rue's blood rain yellow sand leaf? Instead, he was the one who had let Wu Rue consume a precious healing pill and even helped him get rid of the people chasing after him. Now, this guy was actually accusing him of being ungrateful. Chapter 3270, Tianluo sect is expected. The moment Wu Rue said that, Ing Zhuo, who was planning to return home, narrowed his eyes and looked coldly at Zhuowen. However, after hesitating for a while, Ing Zhuo did not attack Zhuowen in the end. Although Zhuowen's aura was also that of a god of creation, he was still a late-stage god of creation. He was one minor realm higher than Ing Zhuo. Ing Zhuo knew very well that even if he attacked, he would not be Zhuowen's match. Thus, he resisted the urge to attack. "Let's go," Ing Zhuo ordered, and was about to leave with Wu Rue when Zhuowen stopped him. Fellow cultivator, do you have any instructions? Ingzhua asked as he stared at Zhuowen cautiously. I would like to ask where the inner layer of the Phoenix Purgatory is. I hope you can give me some pointers. Zhuowen said as he cupped his hands. Ingzhua's eyes flashed, but he smiled and said, if you want to go to the inner layer, you can definitely find me. Our sect master has passed through the inner layer before, so he knows it like the back of his hand. If you really want to enter the inner layer, you can follow me to the Tianluo sect and find our sect master. Of course, you can't go wrong. Zhuowen looked at Ingzhua. He could guess what Ingzhua was planning, but he did not care. He even dared to challenge a powerful race like the Phoenix people. Would he be afraid of a mere Tianluo sect formed by the prisoners of the Phoenix Purgatory? All right, I'll go with you to meet your sect master. Out of Ingzhua's expectations, Zhuowen agreed very readily. Good, good. Our Tianluo sect will definitely not disappoint you. I'm Ingzhua of the Tianluo sect. May I know your name? When Ingzhua heard that Zhuowen was willing to go to the Tianluo sect with him, he immediately became much more enthusiastic. Zhuowen said calmly. Ha ha, Brother Zhuowen, come with me. Our Tianluo sect is not far from the entrance of the canyon. Ingzhua did not mind Zhuowen's attitude. With a hearty laugh, he led Zhuowen into the depths of the canyon. His 7 to 8 subordinates followed behind with Wu Ruwei in tow. Not long after, Zhuowen found an extremely wide-open space in the depths of the canyon. What surprised Zhuowen was that this open space was not invaded by any black flames. Other than the thin heavenly energy here, there was not much difference between the environment here and the outside world. This was an extremely rare place in the undying bird purgatory. In the open space, there were many buildings, and Zhuowen found that the periphery of these buildings was basically set up with array formations. Moreover, he clearly discovered that the buildings on the open space were divided into 3 areas. He knew that these 3 regions should be the territories of the 3 major forces in the outer layer. As for the 3 great powers in the outer layer, he had heard from Wu Ruwei that they were the Tianluo sect, the Bloodrock sect, and the Jade Drop sect. Ingzhua brought them to the region closest to the outer layer. He knew that this should be the Tianluo sect's region. There were many foreign races in the Tianluo sect's region. In this region, they moved freely. Some set up stalls to trade, some talked and laughed, and some sparred. Ingzhua brought Zhuowen and the rest directly to the most magnificent pavilion in this region. Outside the pavilion, Ingzhua waved his hand to the 7 to 8 subordinates behind him and said, "Take Wu Ruwei into the dungeon." The 7 to 8 subordinates naturally did not dare to disobey. Even Wu Ruwei was powerless like a living corpse. He actually regretted returning to the canyon. With his strength, he could still barely survive outside the canyon. However, if he entered the canyon now, he would definitely die. His original plan was to rely on Zhuowen as a shield to block the experts of the Tianluo sect. Of course, if Zhuowen was unable to block it, he could also secretly escape. However, he never expected that Zhuowen would actually not play by the rules and directly cut ties with him, causing him to be captured by Ingzhua. Now, he was clear that his following fate would be very miserable. Before leaving, Wu Ruwei shot a venomous glance at Zhuowen, a trace of perverted pleasure rising in his heart. Although he was dead for sure, he knew that this Zhuowen's outcome would likely be even more miserable than his. "Zhuowen, actually, I have to thank you. Back then, I almost died in the Blackheart Fire Sea. However, that healing divine pill that you gave me allowed me to recover from my injuries in a short period of time. That divine pill is truly too miraculous. The Phoenix Purgatory does not have this kind of divine pill. Speaking of which, you can also be considered my savior. You, before leaving, Wu Rui laughed loudly as he said these words. Unfortunately, just as Wu Rui finished speaking, his glabella was pierced by a burst of energy. He stared fixedly at Zhuowen, his eyes filled with disbelief. Since you said that I am your savior, then now I want to take back this kindness. Zhuowen's indifferent voice rang out. Wu Rui's eyes revealed a look of regret. He should not have said such words at the end of his life that were digging his own grave. However, there was no medicine for regret in this world. Ing Zhuo's eyes suddenly burst forth with light. His gaze towards Zhuowen became even more fervent. He did not care about Wu Rui, who had been killed. They had originally planned to kill Wu Rui. Being killed by Zhuowen was no different from being killed by them. What he was mainly concerned about was the miraculous healing divine pill that Wu Rui had mentioned. He was very clear that a healing divine pill that could heal Wu Rui's injuries in a short period of time was at least a Genesis-level divine pill. Such a divine pill was already very rare in the prehistoric heavenly realm, not to mention a place like the Phoenix Purgatory. Brother Zhuo, wait for a moment in the hall. I will go and inform the sect master now. I believe the sect master will be here very soon. Ing Zhuo's attitude towards Zhuowen became even more enthusiastic and eager. Zhuowen nodded and strode into the hall. The moment he entered the hall, Zhuowen's eyes burst forth with coldness. However, they quickly returned to normal, and he calmly sat on a chair beside him. Ing Zhuo was very satisfied with Zhuowen's performance. After bidding farewell to Zhuowen, he left the hall. The moment Ing Zhuo left, Zhuowen waved his sleeves and took out a pile of beast bone array discs. His hands formed a seal, and instantly array ripples appeared in the surroundings. The moment Zhuowen entered the hall, he sensed that there was a Genesis-level death trap array in the hall. A confinement-killing formation of this level was truly child's play to Zhuowen. He only spent 3 breaths of time to break through the formation and take complete control of it. Moreover, Zhuowen even modified this death trap array a little, forcefully raising its level to the creation level. After doing all this, Zhuowen put away the beast bone array discs and sat quietly on his seat again. Not long after, footsteps sounded from outside the hall. Immediately, he saw a middle-aged man bringing Zhuo into the hall. Chapter 3271. Instant kill. Zhuowen, my young friend, sorry to keep you waiting. I am Hong Luo, the leader of the Tianluo sect. The middle-aged man with 7 colored eyes greeted Zhuowen warmly as soon as he entered the hall. He then took a seat across from Zhuowen, while Ing Zhuo stood silently beside the middle-aged man. Zhuowen went straight to the point after some pleasantries. Hong Luo sect leader, I heard from my friend Ing Zhuo that you ventured into the inner area and are quite familiar with it. I wonder if you can tell me the exact location of the inner area and the situation there? Hong Luo laughed and said, the inner area is too dangerous. My young friend Zhuowen, you don't have to consider going. Staying in the Tianluo sect is the best choice. Don't worry, I've always treated my subordinates fairly. Zhuowen's smile faded as he looked at Hong Luo coldly. Hong Luo wanted him to become a member of the Tianluo sect. Was he trying to force him to join the Tianluo sect? Hee, Hong Luo sect leader, you must be joking. I'm not here to join the Tianluo sect. I'm here for the exact location of the inner area of the Phoenix Purgatory. Also, I have something to ask Sect Master. I wonder if there's a human called Mu Qin Schweringer Canyon? Zhuowen asked. Hong Luo sect leader's smile faded after Zhuowen's rejection. He said indifferently, it seems that my young friend Zhuowen doesn't know how to appreciate kindness. As for the human, I've heard of her, but she's not in the outer area. It's said that she was imprisoned in the inner area by the great elder of the Phoenix people. When the human was imprisoned in the Phoenix purgatory, the outer area was in an uproar. However, I'm not too sure about her name. Zhuowen's eyes flashed. It seemed that Mu Qinxue was indeed not in the outer area but was imprisoned in the inner area. After all, Mu Qinxue was a human. If she was in the outer area of the canyon, it would be easy for the foreign races to identify her. He could easily find out about Mu Qinxue's whereabouts after entering the inner area. However, there was no news about Mu Qinxue. It was obvious that Mu Qinxue was not here. Zhuowen rose to his feet and cupped his fists at Hong Luo. In that case, Hong Luo sect master, please tell me the exact location of the inner chamber. This, Zhui, will not let you provide such information for free. Zhuowen knew that Hong Luo was the main divine elixir of the Phoenix purgatory. He could see that in this undying bird purgatory, divine pills were many times more scarce than in the outside world. Perhaps even in this Tianluo sect, there weren't many reserves of divine pills. Ha ha, I see that fellow Taoist Zhuo is a straightforward person. How about this? If you can take out a bottle of Genesis Divine Elixir, I'll tell you the location of the inner area, Hong Luo said with a smile. Zhuowen nodded and tossed out a jade bottle. There are 12 special grade, supreme, divine refining demon pills in here. They are mainly used to increase a creator's efficiency in absorbing heavenly Tao energy. Hong Luo took the jade bottle and examined it. He couldn't hide the wild joy in his eyes. Hong Luo sect leader, now it's time to tell me the location of the inner area of the Phoenix purgatory, Zhuowen said calmly. Hong Luo calmed down and took out a jade slip. He engraved something on it for a while before tossing it to Zhuowen and said, "This jade slip contains the location of the inner layer that I have drawn. The inner layer is actually not far from the gorge." Zhuowen took the jade slip and studied it for a while. Then he cupped his fists at Hong Luo and left the hall. However, in the process of Zhuo, when leaving the hall, his mind was completely focused on Hong Luo. Hong Luo's cultivation wasn't low. He should be an early-stage Lord of Creation. He'd thought that Hong Luo would definitely use the death trap formation in the hall to attack him after seeing him take out the divine elixir. Unfortunately, Hong Luo didn't do anything until Zhuowen was far away. After leaving the Tianluo sect, Zhuowen headed straight for the route drawn in the jade slip. After Zhuowen left the Tianluo sect, Hong Luo and Ning Zhuo also left the Tianluo sect. The two of them went in different directions, but the general direction was the same. Hasn't Hong Luo been in seclusion all this time? Why did he come out now and leave the canyon? Not long after Hong Luo left the canyon, two figures shot out from the Blood Rock sect and the Jade Sky sect. These two alien race experts had auras similar to Hong Luo's. They were both early-stage lords of creation. Moreover, their status in the canyon wasn't low. They were respectively the Blood Rock sect's master, Xuesher, and the Jade Sky sect's master, Huang Quanzi. Let's follow them and take a look. Hong Luo is extremely cunning. If there aren't any benefits, then it's impossible for him to leave the canyon and suffer. Xuesher's eyes were different from ordinary people. They were filled with terrifying threads of blood, and his voice was terrifyingly low. But we must be careful if we follow them. We must not allow that old fellow Hong Luo to notice us. As soon as Huang Quanzi finished speaking, he vanished on the spot with Xuesher. In next to no time, Huang Quanzi and Xuesher arrived at a dangerous gorge. They hid at the entrance of the gorge while their divine senses silently stretched into the gorge. They noticed Hong Luo and Hong Zhuo were standing within the gorge, and a young man that was very unfamiliar to them was standing before them. The two of them glanced at each other. They knew that the reason Hong Luo and Hong Zhuo had left was probably because of this young man. They just didn't know why Hong Luo had taken a fancy to this young man. Both of them didn't act rashly and alert the young man, and they lay dormant silently while observing the situation within the gorge. At this moment, within the gorge, Zhuowen's expression was extremely gloomy. He looked at Hong Luo and Hong Zhuo before he said coldly, "Why did you give me a fake map?" Zhuowen moved forward according to the route on the jade slip, and he finally arrived at the gorge here. However, he noticed that this gorge was completely empty and there was no entrance to the inner area at all. So, he knew that Hong Luo had deceived him. After that, Hong Luo led Hong Zhuo into the gorge. The corners of Hong Zhuo's mouth were filled with ridicule as he said, "Zhuowen, you're so stupid. I really don't know how you survived until now. Could it be that you don't know that wealth shouldn't be exposed? You ought to have many divine pills in your possession, right? Hand over your spirit ring, and I'll leave your corpse intact and give you a swift death." Zhuowen started laughing instead and said, "Both of you really want the divine pills in my possession. A man whose heart is never content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. It's very easy for both of you to choke on your desire to take my spirit ring. You mean you won't hand it over?" Hong Zhuo licked his lips as he stomped with his right foot, and he flashed towards Zhuowen like an arrow that left the bow. At the instant Hong Zhuo flashed out, Hong Luo moved as well, and he flashed out from another direction to launch a pincer attack against Zhuowen. Even though Hong Luo's cultivation was stronger than Zhuowen's, he didn't be careless in the slightest, and he utilized his full strength as soon as he attacked. Zhuowen's gaze was indifferent as he stood silently on the spot, and he turned a deaf ear to Hong Zhuo and Hong Luo, who were getting closer and closer. "This fellow is courting death." Bloodstone and Huang Quanzi, who were hiding at the entrance of the gorge, were bewildered when they saw Zhuowen actually didn't move at all. Swish! When Hong Zhuo flashed to arrive before Zhuowen, the corners of his mouth revealed a savage smile. But in next to no time, his savage smile vanished as a blood-colored sword light pierced through the space between his brows. His expression froze as he directly collapsed to the ground and lost all signs of life. At the instant the blood-colored sword light annihilated Hong Zhuo, it immediately turned around in midair and flashed towards Hong Luo, who was approaching. Hong Luo was caught off guard, and he was merely able to block 3 moves before the sword light found a flaw and pierced through the space between his brows as well, causing him to become a corpse. Hiss! Hiss! Chapter 3272. Phoenix's soul, who's that? He's too terrifying. He annihilated Swan with a single move. He's at least a peak lord of creation, right? Could it be that he's an expert from the inner area? Bloodstone was horrified, and he hurriedly withdrew his divine sense and spoke with a trembling voice. Huang Quanzi was terrified to the point of withdrawing his divine sense as well. The scene from before was too shocking. Zhuowen hadn't moved at all, yet Hong Zhuo and Swan had been annihilated. Although the two of them thought highly of themselves, they were at most on par with Hong Luo. If they were to face this young man, they knew that their outcome would be no different than Swan's. "Let's leave quickly. We'll be in trouble if this senior notices us." Huang Quanzi spoke in a low voice. Bloodstone hurriedly nodded, so they intended to leave the gorge silently. But in next to no time, they noticed that there was an unusual force obstructing them from behind. They turned around and noticed to their shock that Zhuowen was standing behind them with a grin on his face as he gazed at them. "Senior, we didn't mean to offend you. We just happened to pass by here." Bloodstone and Huang Quanzi knelt on the ground with a thump. They were very sensible and knew that with Zhuowen's strength, they would be courting death if they fled now, so the only way was to beg for mercy. The two of you are probably the masters of the Bloodstone sect and Jadefall sect, right? Moreover, you probably followed Swan and Hong Zhui here. Zhuowen smiled faintly. Bloodstone and Huang Quanzi felt their scalps go numb, and they sighed dejectedly in the end. Senior is right. We are indeed the masters of the Bloodstone sect and Jadefall sect, and we followed Swan here. However, we didn't know about Senior beforehand, so we didn't join forces with Swan to deal with Senior. Zhuowen looked indifferently at Bloodstone and Huang Quanzi and said, "Get up. I don't intend to deal with the two of you. I just want to ask you about the route to the inner area." Bloodstone and Huang Quanzi heaved a sigh of relief in their hearts, and then they hurriedly withdrew jade slips from their spirit rings and fought to pass them to Zhuowen. "Senior, this jade slip of mine has a very detailed map of the route. You can't go wrong with using it." Bloodstone smiled flatteringly and handed the jade slip to Zhuowen. "Senior, the Bloodstone is flawed. In my jade slip, most of the areas of the Undying Bird Purgatory are recorded. It can be considered the most detailed map. Use mine," Huang Quanzi said fawningly. Zhuowen put away their jade slips and looked through them one by one. He found that the maps in their jade slips were almost the same, but the map in Yellow Spring Z's jade slip was slightly more complete. After Zhuowen chose Huang Quanzi's jade slip, he greeted the two and disappeared in a stream of light. Seeing Zhuowen leave, Huang Quanzi and Bloodstone let out a sigh of relief. Zhuowen gave them too much pressure. "Looks like this senior isn't a prisoner from the inner layer. It's very likely that he's a prisoner that the Phoenix people have just captured. Otherwise, it's impossible that he doesn't even know where the inner layer is," Bloodstone guessed. Huang Quanzi nodded and said, "Between the outer layer and the inner layer is the soul of the Undying Bird. That's a terrifying existence that can even kill Lord Tong Tian. If this senior wants to enter the inner layer, I'm afraid it'll be very difficult, and he might even die." Bloodstone's eyes flickered, and he suddenly suggested, "Huang Quanzi, why don't we follow him and take a look? If this senior really dies to the soul of the Undying Bird, then his spirit ring will be ownerless, right?" Huang Quanzi's eyes lit up. Bloodstone was right. Zhuowen was so powerful that he must have a lot of good things on him. This could be seen from the fact that Hong Luo was secretly following him. Although the two of them were no match for Zhuowen, they could still take advantage of him. But if this senior finds out that we're following him, won't he be furious and kill us? Bloodstone was still worried. Huang Quanzi said in a low voice, "Wealth comes from danger. If we follow him from afar, no matter how powerful he is, he won't be able to find us. Moreover, if we're far enough away, even if he finds us, we'll still have time to escape." Bloodstone nodded. When he heard that, he was already tempted. After the two of them finished their discussion, they rushed toward the entrance of the inner layer together. However, the two of them were very slow. They deliberately slowed down in order to put enough distance between them and Zhuowen. In the end, the two of them stopped behind a mountain peak that was close to 10,000 meters away from the entrance of the inner layer. They saw that Zhuowen had stopped at the entrance of the inner layer. Zhuowen had already noticed Huang Quanzi and Bloodstone who were following him, but he didn't pay attention to them. Bloodstone and Huang Quanzi's cultivation levels were too low, and they posed no threat to him at all. He didn't care about these two small fries at all. At this moment, Zhuowen's entire attention was focused on the huge abyss in front of him, which was like a natural chasm. The abyss was extremely deep, and it was hundreds of meters wide. In the abyss, there were black flames that were much more intense than the surroundings. Before Zhuowen even got close to the abyss, he felt a deep chill coming from the flames in the abyss. His body spontaneously combusted, and his skin began to become charred, distorted, and deformed. If it weren't for his strong recovery ability, his body might have already collapsed. Zhuo Wen used the profound creation mysterious light to wrap around his body. Only then was he able to block the powerful corrosion of the black flames. Zhuo Wen came to the edge of the abyss and looked across it. There, he saw a deep path. On both sides of the path, there were red flames burning, forming a sharp contrast with the black flames in the abyss. Zhuo Wen knew that the flames should be the phoenix fire. Behind the undying bird's soul, it opened up a path that even the undying bird's soul didn't dare to approach. As long as he crossed the abyss, he would be safe. Just as Zhuo Wen was about to step out with his right foot, a sense of danger rose in his heart, and he quickly retreated. In the abyss, a black fire python swept out and rushed towards Zhuo Wen at an extremely tricky angle. Zhuo Wen snorted coldly, took out the thunderfire sword, and stood at the fire python 7 inches away. The fire python collapsed with a bang. Whoosh! Whoosh! At the same time, an extremely large number of fire pythons swept out of the abyss. The pitch-black flames burned on the surface of the fire pythons, mysterious and deep. Zhuo Wen took a step forward, and the purple river swept out from the void and gathered around him. Under the power of the purple river, Zhuo Wen's figure constantly flashed in the air, and his speed was extremely fast, dodging more and more fire pythons around him. And every time Zhuo Wen leaped, the thunderfire sword, with terrifying thunder and fire energy, accurately stabbed the fire pythons 7 inches away. In just 50 breaths of time, the numerous fire pythons that swept out of the abyss were all destroyed by Zhuo Wen's sword. Zhuo Wen slowly landed on the ground and looked at the abyss in front of him with a serious gaze. He had a feeling that an extremely vast and cold force was sweeping up from the depths of the abyss at an extremely fast speed. Rumble! Suddenly, the cliffs on both sides of the abyss collapsed, and a huge black shadow swept straight into the sky, stopping thousands of feet above the ground. It spread its wings and flew high, and countless flames swept across the sky, creating a terrifying and spectacular black sea of fire. Zhuo Wen slowly raised his head and looked at the sky, at the black shadow that covered the sun. It was a huge bird that was burning with black flames, and its sharp eyes were filled with deep black. Zhuo Wen knew that this should be the undying bird's soul. Bang! 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 The undying bird's soul's pressure was extremely terrifying, and the wasteland within a radius of millions of miles was swept by this pressure, spreading terrifying dust and wind. Chapter 3273. Unbelievable. It's the soul of the undying bird. How terrifying. Behind the mountain peak in the distance, Xue Shi and Huang Quanzi were almost blown away by the storm caused by the soul of the undying bird. After they barely managed to stabilize themselves, their eyes were filled with shock as they felt that it was unbelievable. This senior is finished. He's no match for the soul of the undying bird. Bloodstone and Huang Quanzi shook their heads inwardly. They didn't think that Zhuo Wen could really break through the soul of the undying bird and enter the inner layer. Everyone in the outer layer knew that as long as they could break through the soul of the undying bird and reach the other side, they could enter the inner layer. The prisoners in the inner layer also knew that as long as they could break through the soul of the undying bird, they could leave this damned place. However, countless prisoners in the inner layer had tried to leave over the years, but they had all died at the hands of the soul of the undying bird. Among them were many Master of Heaven experts. In the eyes of Bloodstone and Huang Quanzi, although Zhuo Wen was powerful and had killed Hong Luo, he was at most a peak master of creation. Facing the soul of the undying bird, he was simply courting death. When the soul of the undying bird reached the highest point in the sky, Zhuo Wen narrowed his eyes. He kicked off with his right foot, and a long purple river circled around him. His figure flickered in the air like a ghost. As his figure flickered, the wings of the undying bird's soul suddenly spread out. Suddenly, black flames swept out from the wings of the undying bird's soul and fell down. Zhuowen was too fast. He quickly dodged the falling black flames. The energy of the black flames had condensed to a terrifying degree. When they landed on the ground, they blasted it into nothingness and fine powder. As Zhuowen dodged, he summoned the Yama ghost diagram. Thick black fog swirled out. Zhuowen pointed forward with his right hand. The first layer of the Yama ghost diagram opened, and dozens of ghost chains swept out. The ghost chains were extremely fast. They swept out in all directions and surrounded the soul of the undying bird. With a whoosh, the soul of the undying bird was completely trapped. The undying bird let out a furious howl. It actually felt intense pain from the ghost chains. It was so painful that it felt as if its soul was being stabbed by thousands of blades. It wanted to break free, but found that the ghost chains were getting tighter and tighter. It was impossible for it to break free. Zhuowen endured the pain of the ghost chain's backlash. He knew that the ghost chain was a powerful method to deal with the soul. The soul of the undying bird didn't translation. The soul of the undying bird didn't the body. Only its soul was its soul. However, he also knew the soul of the undying bird was the ghost chains. It was the undying bird, was the ghost bird. Therefore, he did not hesitate to open the second layer of the Yama ghost diagram. For ferocious-looking evil spirits let out ear-piercing howls and rushed out toward the soul of the undying bird above. Boom, boom, boom. The soul of the undying bird was shocked and angry. It kept resisting, but under the restraint of the ghost chains, its strength was reduced to less than 10%. It was suppressed by the roar. Zhuowen stopped on a broken stone and floated in the air. His face was pale, and his forehead was covered with cold sweat. He looked at the soul of the undying bird. The soul of the undying bird is really tenacious. It's trapped by the ghost faces and the roar. It's just at a disadvantage. Zhuowen took a deep breath and took out the Ho-E godly bow and Ho-E godly arrow from the macro world. He pulled the bowstring to a half moon. A terrifying killing intent filled the whole space. The soul of the undying bird also felt the terrifying killing intent. It roared in fear and began to struggle violently. Terrifying black flames burst out like a chain explosion. It was extremely terrifying. Qi, Mei, Wang, and Liang, the four evil spirits, were sent flying by the terrifying black flames. They retreated continuously, all of them suffering from injuries. However, the roar didn't care about their injuries at all. They pounced crazily and attacked the soul of the undying bird. They forcibly stalled the soul of the undying bird. Zhuowen hesitated for a while. Then, he pulled the bowstring to 2/3. The power of the Ho-E godly arrow immediately increased by 100 times. After the blood of the golden crow was wiped off, the Ho-E godly bow's potential was fully unleashed. It was very difficult for Zhuowen to pull the bowstring to a full moon. 2/3 was his limit. Whoosh! The Ho-E godly arrow left the bowstring and tore through the air with a deafening explosion. It finally rushed into the soul of the undying bird. Bang! 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 The soul of the undying bird let out a deafening cry. The terrifying power of the Ho-E godly arrow created a terrifying explosion vortex on the soul of the undying bird. The soul of the undying bird struggled violently. The ghost chain on its body shook violently. Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood. The ghost chain was related to his soul. When the ghost chain was damaged, his soul would naturally be affected accordingly. However, Zhuowen could clearly see that the soul of the undying bird was growing dimmer and dimmer. Its aura was rapidly weakening. He knew that the Ho-E godly arrow had taken effect. he hurriedly swallowed 2 divine pills, one for healing and one for repairing the soul. Then he took out 3 more godly arrows. These were the other 3 godly arrows he had found in the eldritch heaven realm. Zhuowen knocked the 3 godly arrows on the bowstring and pulled the bowstring to 2/3 again. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The 3 arrows shot out at the same time. They turned into 3 streaks of blood-red light. With monstrous killing intent, they blasted into the soul of the undying bird. These 3 godly arrows were stained with the golden crow's blood. Therefore, they were much weaker than the first godly arrow. However, when the 3 godly arrows were combined, they were indeed more powerful than the first godly arrow. The soul of the undying bird let out a weak cry. After being pierced by the 3 godly arrows, its enormous body was directly torn to pieces. Rumble! Just as the soul of the undying bird was about to collapse, it suddenly exploded. The ghost chains that surrounded him were affected by the terrifying explosive energy and were directly shattered. Qi Mei Wang smashed into the ground from midair. Her body was burning with deep black flames, as if she wanted to burn Qi Mei Wang into nothingness. Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was unnaturally pale. Zhuowen hurriedly took out the Yama ghost diagram. He collected the shattered ghost chain, demons and monsters, and the 4 godly arrows that were scattered in the distance. With a flash, he rushed through the abyss in front of him and entered the blazing great path. Outside the mountain in the distance, Huang Quanzi and Bloodstone were completely stunned. The battle just now had happened too quickly. The soul of the undying bird had only used 1 move before it was killed by Zhuowen. This was simply too shocking. This senior, he killed the soul of the undying bird. Bloodstone, punch me and see if I'm dreaming. Huang Quanzi muttered to himself. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Chapter 3274. Inside the phoenix blood pool, the blazing red path was wide and deep, as if it had no end. The moment Zhuowen entered the path, he immediately felt the power of the flames. They were no weaker than the black flames outside. In fact, they were even stronger. Zhuowen did not continue forward. Instead, he found a rather concealed pile of rocks by the side of the road. He hid in the pile of rocks and then set up a powerful concealment formation and defensive formation there. After the defensive array was set up, the terrifying fiery red flames in the surroundings were all blocked by the defensive array. Zhuowen also let out a soft sigh of relief. Splat! At this moment, Zhuowen's face was as pale as a dying patient. His sea of consciousness was like a bucket of paste. The side effects of the Yama demon portrait were too terrifying. At this moment, Zhuowen had a splitting headache, and he wanted to hit the ground with his head. Red blood was flowing out of his 7 orifices. Forcefully enduring the intense discomfort in his sea of consciousness, Zhuowen summoned the Great World. He turned the Great World into dust and attached it to the surface of a rock. Then he entered the Great World. In the Great World, on a small island in the center of the lake, Ghost Plume and Inwuxia silently guarded the phoenix blood pool. They sat cross-legged and meditated. The holy maiden of the phoenix people was standing by the door of the pavilion. Her beautiful eyes flickered, and she revealed a hesitant expression. She really wanted to snatch the phoenix blood pool, but she didn't have even 1/10 of her strength left. The 99 phoenix body's bloodline had been completely extracted by Zhuowen. Ghost Plume and Inwuxia were both very powerful. They were both peak god of creation stage powerhouses. In addition, not far from the small island in the center of the lake, the 3 divine swords led by the Thunderfire sword were also nearby. If she made any strange moves, she was very clear that she would die a miserable death. With a soft sigh, the holy maiden of the Phoenix people gave up on the idea of snatching the pool. This idea was completely unrealistic to her. Whoosh! Suddenly, a streak of light flew over from afar and landed on the small island in the center of the lake. Ghost Plume and Wuxia sensed something amiss. They opened their eyes and stood up vigilantly. However, when they saw that the person who came was Zhuowen, their gazes softened a lot, but they soon revealed a look of bewilderment. This was because Zhuowen was in a very bad state. He was bleeding from his 7 orifices, and his face was as pale as a ghost. He looked like a vengeful ghost. "Lord Zhuo, what happened to you?" Gui Ling was alarmed. Zhuowen's current state was simply too terrifying. He could not help but probe. Zhuowen did not pay any attention to Gui Ling and Wuxia. Instead, he leaped into the Phoenix blood pool and said solemnly, "The 2 of you stand guard for me in the Phoenix blood pool." With that, Zhuowen took out more than 10 bottles of healing divine pills and absorbed the Phoenix blood energy in the Phoenix blood pool. To the Phoenix people, the Phoenix blood pool was a pool that preserved the divine soul. The energy within the Phoenix blood pool had a powerful healing effect on the divine soul. Therefore, after Zhuowen's divine soul was damaged, the first thing he thought of was the Phoenix blood pool. As soon as he entered the Phoenix blood pool, Zhuowen immediately sensed a mysterious energy within the Phoenix blood pool. It gathered in his sea of knowledge and began to repair Zhuowen's shattered sea of knowledge and divine soul. A comfortable feeling rushed from Zhuowen's tailbone to his head. It was so comfortable that Zhuowen almost cried out. Ghost Plume and Wuxia's eyes were full of solemnity. They were well aware of Zhuowen's strength. Even a Skirich expert wouldn't be able to easily injure Zhuowen. But now, Zhuowen was so weak that he was almost on the verge of death. They really didn't know what kind of abnormal existence Zhuowen's opponent was. Although they were shocked, the 2 of them still dutifully guarded the Phoenix blood pool. They also glared fiercely at the Phoenix people's saintess, who was standing by the door of the pavilion with a strong sense of warning in their eyes. The Phoenix people's saintess felt a lot more relaxed. When she saw that Zhuowen was seriously injured, she knew that he must have been injured by the Phoenix people. Originally, when Zhuowen destroyed the Phoenix people's ancestral shrine and the Phoenix blood pool, the Phoenix people's saintess thought that Zhuowen was so strong that no one in the Phoenix people could match him. But now, it seemed that she had thought too much. Zhuowen was strong, but there was a limit to his strength. He wasn't a match for the true experts of the Phoenix people. The Phoenix people's saintess felt a little regretful. If Zhuowen was killed now, it would be great. Then, she could be discovered by the experts of the Phoenix people and escape from this great world. Time passed by. Zhuowen, who was in the Phoenix blood pool, narrowed his eyes and absorbed the energy of the Phoenix blood pool as if he was drunk. As he continued to absorb the energy of the Phoenix blood pool, Zhuowen found that his divine soul was not only repaired, but also strengthened. In addition, the energy of the Phoenix blood pool could be absorbed by the Pangu's sacred body and strengthened the latter's physique. His Pangu's sacred body had been promoted to the early 7-star level for a long time, but it showed no signs of improvement. He also knew that when the Pangu's sacred body was cultivated to such a level, it could only be improved by relying on the power provided by the ancestral sorcery venomous insects, unless it was a very high level of energy. Zhuowen was pleasantly surprised that the energy of the Phoenix blood pool could improve his Pangu's sacred body. Zhuowen also knew the origin of the Phoenix blood pool. The pool contained the essence and blood of the divine beast, the phoenix. In ancient times, the phoenix was an extremely powerful existence. Although it was not as famous as the 12 ancestral sorcerers, it was very difficult for the 12 ancestral sorcerers to defeat the phoenix in terms of combat strength and bloodline. It was easy to imagine how precious and powerful the essence and blood of such a powerful existence was. It was not surprising that it could improve the level of Zhuowen's Pango's sacred body. 10 days later, the Phoenix blood pool, which was originally blood red, became as clear as water. Almost all of the Phoenix blood in the Phoenix blood pool had been absorbed by Zhuowen. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes and jumped out of the pool. His eyes were full of excitement. After absorbing the entire Phoenix blood pool, Zhuowen found that his Pango's sacred body had loosened. He found that his Pango's sacred body was not far from the middle 7-star level. Congratulations, Lord Zhua. Your injuries are as good as new, and your cultivation has improved. Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia hurriedly bowed. The moment Zhuowen jumped out of the Phoenix blood pool, the two of them could clearly feel that Zhuowen's aura was sharper and stronger than before. You absorbed all the energy of the Phoenix blood pool. Zhuowen nodded at Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia. Then he heard the saintess of the Phoenix people's unfriendly voice from the pavilion door not far away. Zhuowen looked coldly at the Phoenix people. His vast aura burst out, and he said indifferently, "What? Saintess, do you have a problem with that?" The saintess of the Phoenix people felt the impact of this powerful aura and could not help but take more than 10 steps back. Her pretty face was pale and bloodless. She quickly lowered her head and did not dare to speak. However, when the saintess of the Phoenix people lowered her head, her eyes were full of resentment. She kept cursing in her heart. When Zhuowen left this time, she hoped that he would die tragically in the hands of the Phoenix people. Zhuowen no longer paid attention to the saintess of the Phoenix people. He flipped his right hand and took out 2 divine pills. He handed them to Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia and said, "These are Tai Chi energy gathering divine pills. They can help you advance to the Lord of Creation realm. You have done a good job protecting the Phoenix people. These 2 divine pills are your reward." Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia took the divine pills and hurriedly bowed to express their gratitude. Chapter 3275. Snake-faced man. When Zhuowen left the outside world and appeared in the pile of rocks, he saw a snake-faced man holding a snake-shaped halberd and constantly attacking the defensive array in front of him. When Zhuowen appeared in the pile of rocks, the snake-faced man stopped and smiled sinisterly. "The master of the array is really inside. Come out and hand the array to me. I'll only cripple your cultivation and won't take your life." Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. The snake-faced man wanted him to hand over the array and cripple his cultivation. This was too arrogant. Although the snake-faced man's cultivation was not bad, he was only a half-step master. In Zhuowen's eyes, he was just trash. This kind of trash dared to be arrogant in front of him. It was simply laughable. Seeing that Zhuowen did not speak, the snake-faced man said impatiently, "I'll give you one more chance. Get out. Otherwise, after I break the array, you won't even have your life." Zhuowen smiled and slowly withdrew the defensive and concealment arrays. This snake-faced man was not simple. He could see through his concealment array and attack his defensive array. Zhuowen said indifferently, "You're a prisoner in the inner layer? You don't have the right to know this kind of thing. You're very obedient, so I'll keep my promise. I won't kill you and will only cripple your cultivation." After the snake-faced man finished speaking, he stomped his right foot and shot out like a cannonball. In an instant, he was in front of Zhuowen. The snake-faced man laughed sinisterly and quickly stabbed out with the snake-shaped halberd in his hand. In an instant, 4 halberd lights exploded and shot towards Zhuowen's limbs. The snake-faced man planned to cripple Zhuowen's limbs as soon as he came up. It could be seen how ruthless this person was. Zhuowen remained motionless as he punched out with his fist. The 4 halberd lights exploded as Zhuowen's fist landed on the snake-faced man's face in an instant. "Puchi, The snake-faced man didn't expect that his attack would be destroyed so easily, so he wasn't prepared for Zhuowen's punch. A heavy punch landed on the snake-faced man's face. The snake-faced man spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with broken teeth. The snake-faced man heavily smashed onto the ground. His entire body twitched, and his entire face cracked and twisted. Bang! The snake-faced man roared furiously. Just as he was about to stand up, Zhuowen ruthlessly stomped on his chest. The powerful force hit the snake-faced man's body, and the snake-faced man's roar came to an abrupt stop, and he spat out another mouthful of blood. You, the snake-faced man was trembling all over, but his eyes were filled with fear. He had never thought that he would run into a tough opponent. However, this person's aura was clearly only that of a god of creation, yet his power was far superior to his own. He was able to crush him like a weakling. This was far too terrifying. Now you should answer my question, right? Zhuowen looked down at the snake-faced man beneath his feet, and the killing intent in his eyes was extremely dense. The snake-faced man's body trembled, and he hurriedly replied, I am indeed a prisoner in the inner layer. 3 days ago, the power of the undying bird's soul was suddenly weakened to the extreme. Many powerful beings in the inner layer became restless and came to explore the undying bird's abyss. What was strange was that when they passed through the undying bird's abyss, the undying bird's soul didn't react. Thus, this news spread throughout the inner layer, and all of the prisoners trapped in the inner layer left the inner layer and entered the outer layer. I was also planning to leave the inner layer, but I just so happened to discover the fluctuations of your spell formation, so I tried to attack it. I didn't think that there really would be a spell formation here. Then, as you know, what happened next? The snake-faced man's eyes were filled with hope. He was afraid that Zhuowen would be ruthless and kill him. I asked around in the outer layer. There is a human imprisoned in the inner layer. You know this? Zhuowen asked. The snake-faced man hurriedly said, Senior, you are wise. You even know this. There is indeed a human imprisoned in the inner layer, and this human is very powerful. I met this human once, but I didn't dare to provoke him. Zhuowen frowned slightly, feeling that something was wrong. He waved his sleeve and summoned Mu Qinshua's virtual image, and said, Is that human, this woman? The snake-faced man was stunned. He hesitated for a moment and said, Senior, that human expert is not a woman, but a man. He calls himself Crepe Myrtle Star, and he is invincible in the inner layer. No one dares to provoke him. Many of us in the inner layer speculated that Crepe Myrtle Star's strength was enough to break through the protection of the undying bird's soul and leave the inner layer. However, he didn't leave and has been staying in the inner layer. Crepe Myrtle Star hasn't left and is still in the inner layer. Crepe Myrtle Star. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. He was surprised and happy. He was surprised that Mu Qinshu was not in the undying bird's purgatory, and happy that he met an old friend, Crepe Myrtle Star, here. Take me to Crepe Myrtle Star. Otherwise, you'll die miserably on the spot right now. Zhuowen calmed down and spoke with a cold expression. The snake-faced man hurriedly nodded and bowed. Then he got up and led Zhuowen to the depths of the Flaming Avenue. Not long after they walked on the Flaming Avenue, 2 figures walked toward them. The 2 figures were a man and a woman. Their auras were extremely powerful. The man was as strong as a bear and had thick hair on his body. His aura was strong. He was actually an expert at the early stage of Tongtian Master. The woman was enchanting and charming. Her beautiful cheeks were covered with white snake scales. Her lower body was a snake's tail. Her aura was slightly weaker than the man's, but similar to the snake-faced man. She should also be a half-step Tongtian master. When the snake-faced man saw the 2 men, He was overjoyed and said, "Brother, sister-in-law, you still haven't left the inner area." The strong man didn't care about Zhuowen at all. Instead, he looked at the snake-faced man and laughed loudly. "We had some things to deal with inside. Now that we're done, we naturally came out. On the other hand, didn't you leave earlier than us? Why did you turn back now?" The snake-faced man's face was gloomy. He glanced at Zhuowen behind him and said with a smile, "This is my friend. I'm taking my friend to the inner area to broaden his horizons. He hasn't seen the scenery of the inner area yet." The strong man and the snake woman narrowed their eyes and said meaningfully, "Since he's your friend, you take him to the inner area first. We'll meet in the outer area when the time comes." The snake-faced man hurriedly agreed. Then he led Zhuowen past the strong man and the snake woman. However, the moment he brushed past Zhuowen, the sturdy man suddenly threw out a punch, aiming for Zhuowen's vital point. Zhuowen sneered coldly in his heart. He did not plan on dodging at all. Instead, at the same time the strong man's fist blasted over, his right hand formed a claw and grabbed at the snake woman. The snake woman clearly did not expect that Zhuowen did not dodge, and actually took the initiative to attack her. She was first stunned, then she immediately revealed a cold smile. Her snake tail suddenly swung, slamming onto Zhuowen's hand claw. Unfortunately, Zhuowen was not an ordinary person. He grabbed onto the snake tail and immediately exerted force. The snake woman was directly grabbed by Zhuowen. Immediately, Zhuowen swung, smashing the snake woman's entire body onto the strong man's fist. Crack! The strong man's all-out punch smashed viciously onto the snake woman's chest. The snake woman emitted a shrill scream. Her sternum directly caved in. A mouthful of fresh blood spewed out. The strong man was frightened until he hurriedly pulled back, his expression changing drastically. Chapter 3276. Goodbye. Crepe Myrtle's star. Lord, the burly man was afraid of accidentally injuring the lamia, so he was fearful. Zhuowen caught a loophole, and he suddenly swung the lamia's tail and smashed it into the burly man's chest. The burly man and the lamia screamed at the same time as they were sent flying. Zhuowen, on the other hand, had his hands behind his back, like an old tree that had taken root. He stood firmly on the spot. A sword light emerged from his body and shot out explosively. This sword light carried with it the energy of thunder and fire that soared into the sky. It flew out and instantly pierced through the space between the brows of the burly man and the lamia. The lamia died on the spot, but the burly man reacted quickly and moved away from the space between his eyebrows. The thunder-fire sword pierced through the man's chest and nailed him to the ground. The snake-faced man was so scared that he sat on the ground, his entire body trembling. He looked at Zhuowen with eyes full of fear, as if he was not looking at Zhuowen himself, but a ferocious and terrifying devil. Zhuowen ignored the snake-faced man and slowly walked to the burly man's side. The burly man's body trembled as he hurriedly begged for mercy. "Sir, I offended you just now. I hope you can be magnanimous and let me go like a fart. There are many people who want to kill me, but I'm basically alive and well now. As for the people who want to kill me, they've all gone to hell. I think you should go there and take a look." Zhuowen's voice was calm. Under the terrified gaze of the burly man, he waved his sleeve and a spiral of strength chi shot out and entered the space between the burly man's eyebrows. The burly man's eyes were wide open as he died, with everlasting regret. Zhuowen shot out a stream of divine fire and burned the corpses of the lamia and the burly man to ashes. He then turned to look at the snake-faced man who was already at a loss from fear and said, "Continue leading the way." The snake-faced man was stunned for a moment before he reacted. He scrambled to his feet and hurriedly led the way in front of Zhuowen. This time, the snake-faced man could be said to be much more attentive and flattering. When facing Zhuowen, he was even more respectful and exaggerated than when facing a god. Very quickly, the two of them walked past the blazing path and entered a blood-red cliff. At the bottom of the cliff, there was an open space with bloodstones arranged in an uneven pattern. "My lord, this is where the prisoners in the inner layer live. Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign is in the southeast corner. That is the forbidden area of the inner layer. It is where Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign cultivates. None of us dare to disturb such a ruthless person." At the mention of Crepe Myrtle Star, the snake-faced man's face was filled with fear and reverence. Zhuowen and the snake-faced man arrived at the southeast corner of the open space and discovered that there was a deep blood-red cave in the southeast corner. When Zhuowen was about to enter the bloody cave, he immediately sensed that something was wrong. At the entrance of the bloody cave, there were waves of ripples, and soon after, waves of bloody spirals rushed out and bombarded Zhuowen's vital acupoints. With a wave of his sleeve, Zhuowen blocked all the bloody spirals. However, it was not easy for Zhuowen to block them. These bloody spirals were very powerful. They actually broke through the creation mysterious light that covered his body and pierced through his body, leaving behind terrifying bloody holes. Zhuowen hurriedly retreated, and the bloody spiral at the entrance of the cave also disappeared. Zhuowen's gaze was solemn. The bloody spiral that appeared at the entrance of the cave was not formed by some kind of great formation. Instead, it was left behind by some kind of powerful energy at the entrance of the cave. If someone barged into the cave, it would activate this energy to attack the intruder. The terrifying bloody holes on Zhuowen's body gradually healed under his powerful recovery ability, but his expression was somewhat uncertain. The energy at the entrance of the cave was simply too powerful. If he wanted to break through this energy defense, he could naturally do it, but the price he would have to pay was quite high. The snake-faced man looked at Zhuowen in surprise. He knew very well how terrifying the restriction at the entrance of Crepe Myrtle Star's cave was. In the past, there were many experts in the inner layer who wanted to barge in to take a look, but they were all wiped out by the energy at the entrance of the cave. Almost none of them survived. It was because of this precedent that the experts in the inner layer did not dare to barge into Crepe Myrtle Star's cave. After Zhuowen's injuries recovered, he stood silently at the entrance of the cave. He knew that when he attacked the entrance of the cave just now, he had already attracted the attention of the people in the cave. He believed that Crepe Myrtle Star would come out soon. "Who is it? How dare you barge into this Star-Lord's cave?" A loud voice like a bell came from the depths of the cave. Soon after, the sound of approaching footsteps came from inside the cave. The snake-faced man looked very nervous. He whispered, "My lord, Crepe Myrtle Star is not to be trifled with. He once fought 1 against 3 and killed 3 early-stage transcending heaven lords. I think we should leave this place." Zhuowen stood quietly on the spot, his eyes like torches as he looked at the entrance of the cave. He turned a deaf ear to the snake-faced man's words. The snake-faced man was a little embarrassed. He wanted to leave, but without Zhuowen's order, he did not dare to. When a familiar figure finally came out of the cave, Zhuowen's eyes lit up. This was a handsome man dressed in purple. His face was angular, and he was extremely handsome. Zhuowen was all too familiar with this man. He was Crepe Myrtle Star, whom he had met in the 8 heavens. Crepe Myrtle Star's aura was very vast and powerful, surpassing that of an early stage transcending heaven lord. Zhuowen's eyes were very sharp. Crepe Myrtle Star's cultivation should be at the mid-stage transcending heaven lord, but his aura far exceeded that of an ordinary mid-stage transcending heaven lord. He guessed that Crepe Myrtle Star was probably a peak mid-stage, transcending Heaven Lord. This surprised Zhuowen. When Crepe Myrtle Star was in the 8 heavens, he had not yet attained his Tao. It had only been a few hundred years since he left the 8 heavens, but Crepe Myrtle Star's cultivation had improved so quickly that he had even surpassed Zhuowen. Zhuowen thought that his opportunities were already terrifying enough, but now he realized that compared to Crepe Myrtle Star, his opportunities were probably nothing. Crepe Myrtle Star's aura was very aggressive. He soon saw Zhuowen and the snake-faced man. However, Crepe Myrtle Star's attention was not on the snake-faced man, but on Zhuowen. His gaze was first angry, then puzzled, and finally shocked. Brother Zhuo, Crepe Myrtle Star, stared at Zhuowen and could not help but cry out in surprise. However, there was still some uncertainty in his voice. Brother Crepe Myrtle, after so many years, you still remember me. How rare. Zhuowen replied with a faint smile. Crepe Myrtle Star laughed loudly. With a wave of his sleeve, he expelled the powerful energy that had been set up at the entrance of the cave. He stepped forward and gave Zhuowen a bear hug. Chapter 3277. Reminiscence. Zhuowen smiled and did not explain the aura on his body. Instead, he said, Brother Ziwei, can I enter your cave and have a chat with you? Ziwei Star Monarch said warmly, Of course, and this is your friend. When Crepe Myrtle Star saw the snake-faced man behind Zhuowen, who was still trembling in shock, a look of surprise appeared in his eyes. Oh, this is the guide I found. Zhuowen turned and said to the snake-faced man, There's nothing for you to do here. You can leave now. The snake-faced man was startled at first, but then he was overjoyed. He quickly bowed to Zhuowen and thanked him, then fled the place as fast as he could. Brother Zhuo, you're really soft-hearted. This person should be a prisoner of the inner layer. He didn't bring you here with good intentions. Instead of killing him, you let him escape, Ziwei Star Monarch said in surprise. Zhuowen shook his head and said, It doesn't matter. This person is just a clown. I don't need to bother with such a person. Brother Ziwei, let's go in and have a chat. There are some things I want to ask you. Ziwei Star Monarch nodded and led Zhuowen into the cave. Before entering, Ziwei Star Monarch waved his sleeve and set up a powerful energy defense at the entrance of the cave. In the depths of the cave was a spacious stone room. There was everything inside, and the decorations were quite luxurious. Ziwei Star Monarch and Zhuowen sat opposite each other at a large table carved from jade. Ziwei Star Monarch took out a bottle of immortal wine from his spirit ring, filled a cup, and brought it to Zhuowen. He said, Brother Zhuo, I brewed this immortal wine myself. It's called melancholy wine. It's sweet and has a rich aftertaste. Zhuowen lifted his wine cup as the fragrance of the wine entered his nostrils. An intoxicated look involuntarily appeared in his eyes. He drank it in one gulp. It was indeed, as Ziwei Star Monarch said. It was sweet and had a rich aftertaste. A faint and wondrous sweet taste spread into his mouth, and his body felt light as a feather, as if he was floating in the sky. Good wine. Zhuowen put down his wine cup and couldn't help but praise. Crepe Myrtle Star chuckled. He picked up the immortal wine again and poured a cup for Zhuowen. Then he raised the cup and offered a toast to Zhuowen. The two of them toasted each other and were drunk. After 3 rounds of drinks, Zhuowen put down his cup, looked at Purple Star Monarch, and said, Brother Purple Star, I risked my life to cross the Xian Mi heavenly domain to the ancient desolate heavenly domain, and the Phoenix people to enter the Phoenix purgatory for my wife, Mu Qinxue. I once heard from the saintess of the Phoenix people that my wife, Mu Qinxue, was imprisoned in the Phoenix purgatory, but I entered the outer and inner layers of the Phoenix purgatory, but I didn't find any trace of my wife. Purple Star Monarch put down his cup, and his eyes became serious and hesitant. He sighed and said, "Brother Zhua, when I recognized you, I knew you were here for Mu Qinxue. To tell you the truth, when I was imprisoned in the inner layer, I did see Mu Qinxue, but Mu Qinxue was imprisoned in a very special place. It was neither the outer layer nor the inner layer, but a separate prison above the inner layer. This prison is filled with flames that target the divine soul. Entering that prison is no different from entering the 18 levels of hell. Mu Qinshue's screams can often be heard in the inner layer. Bang! The jade-carved table in front of him was destroyed. Purple Star Monarch looked at Zhuowen with a serious gaze. He saw that Zhuowen had only used his right hand to crush the jade table to dust. His strength was beyond Purple Star Monarch's expectations. Zhuowen took a deep breath and said in an apologetic voice, "Brother Purple Star, I'm sorry, I was a bit impulsive. I destroyed your table. What happened after that? Where is Chen Shui in prison now?" Purple Star Monarch waved his hand, telling Zhuowen not to mind. He continued, "After that, Mu Qinxue was taken away by the great elder of the Phoenix people. As for where she was taken, I don't know either." Taken away, Zhuowen's pupils shrank. He could not help thinking of what Yuefu had said. The great elder and third elder of the Phoenix people had left the great, desolate heaven domain a while ago. As for why the great elder and third elder left, Yuefu did not know either. Zhuowen did not care about this news at all, and was pleasantly surprised that the great elder and third elder were not here. It was beneficial for him to break into the Phoenix people. Now it seemed like he had missed out on important information. Zhuowen was a bit dazed. He thought that he would be able to save Mu Qinxue by entering the undying bird purgatory, but now it seemed like he had missed out. But very quickly, Zhuowen adjusted his attitude. At the very least, he now had a clue about Mu Qinshue's whereabouts. As long as he knew where the first and third elders had taken Mu Qinshue, he could follow this clue and find Mu Qinshue. "Brother Purple Star, why did you enter the great, desolate heaven domain? Moreover, you were imprisoned in the undying bird purgatory. I remember that you went to the Xianmi heaven domain, right?" Zhuowen looked at the Purple Star Monarch, his eyes full of doubt and curiosity. Back when he was in the Slaughter Heaven domain, when he first heard of the Purple Star Monarch, he was very confused. The Purple Star Monarch actually entered the Slaughter Heaven domain directly, then broke through the Slaughter Heaven domain and entered the Primitive Heaven domain. This was too unbelievable. He did not know how the Purple Star Monarch did it. The Purple Star Monarch hesitated for a moment, then said in a deep voice, "Brother Zhua, you are not an outsider, so I will tell you the truth. Back then, I did go to the heavenly moat to cross into the Xianmi heaven domain, but the heavenly moat was too terrifying. I almost died there, but I was lucky. At the moment of danger, I found a hidden ruin. After I entered the ruin, I explored it and found that it was the inheritance left behind by the divine beast, the undying bird. However, the undying bird's inheritance was only half. After I accepted half of the undying bird's inheritance, my cultivation improved by leaps and bounds. Even the aura on my body became less like that of a human and more like that of the undying bird. After I completely accepted the half of the undying bird's inheritance, the other half of the undying bird's inheritance appeared in my mind. It was in the undying bird purgatory of the Phoenix people. An ancient teleportation array appeared in the ruin. I activated the ancient teleportation array and was teleported to the entrance of the secret passage to the great, desolate heaven domain. Zhuowen's eyes moved, and he asked, "Did you meet a huge black lion at the entrance?" "Yes, Brother Zhua. It seems that you also met that black lion." That black lion called himself the Black King and asked me to gamble with him. I won in the end and obtained the qualification to enter the great desolate heaven domain. Speaking of this, the purple star monarch's eyes were filled with anger. The Black King clearly told me that once I entered the passage, I would immediately reach the great desolate heaven domain. But in the end, under the Black King's instructions, I entered the massacre heavenly domain. Zhuowen was speechless. He looked at the purple star monarch with pity. As a victim of the Black King, he could understand the grief and indignation in the purple star monarch's heart. Brother Purple Star, you are not the only one who was cheated. I was cheated too. Back then, I learned of your whereabouts in the massacre heavenly domain. Zhuowen said solemnly, Chapter 3278, Black Gold Door, Brother Crepe Myrtle, that is to say, you entered the undying bird purgatory to find the other half of the undying bird's inheritance? Zhuowen asked. Zhuowen had a deep impression of the undying bird. The undying bird was also an ancient divine beast. Perhaps it was slightly inferior to the phoenix, but it was definitely not inferior by much. The soul of the undying bird guarding the entrance to the inner layer was actually just a remnant soul of the undying bird. However, it was just a remnant soul. Zhuowen had to use all kinds of trump cards to finally destroy the remnant soul. Moreover, he was also seriously injured. He knew very well that if the real undying bird appeared, it would only need one move to destroy him, Zhuowen, until nothing was left. Yes, I deliberately committed a crime in Phoenix Blood City, and was then caught in the undying bird purgatory. After such a long time of exploration, I basically know the exact location of the other half of the undying bird's inheritance, Crepe Myrtle Star Monarch said confidently. Brother Crepe Myrtle, since the undying bird's inheritance exists here, the Phoenix people should have already taken it. How could they not have taken it away until now? Zhuowen asked doubtfully. Brother Zhua, you may not know this, but the undying bird purgatory is suppressing the physical body of the undying bird. The undying bird has the innate ability of being immortal and indestructible. Even the divine beast Phoenix, although it defeated the undying bird, it did not have the ability to completely kill the undying bird. It could only suppress its physical body below. The undying bird is suppressed by the phoenix in the undying bird purgatory. If the phoenix people want to enter the undying bird purgatory, they will easily be devoured by the power of the undying bird. Therefore, it is not that the phoenix people do not want to seize the undying bird's inheritance, but that no one among the phoenix people has the ability to go deep into the purgatory. Moreover, I suspect that once the experts of the Phoenix people have the ability to seize the undying bird's inheritance, I think the undying bird will very likely self-destruct and destroy its own inheritance. I've basically been researching how to enter the lowest level of the undying bird purgatory and find the undying bird's body to obtain the other half of the inheritance, Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign said. Upon hearing this, Zhuowen nodded. He felt that what Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign said made sense. Brother Crepe Myrtle, do you have any leads now? Zhuowen asked. Crepe Myrtle Star nodded and said, I do have some clues. After all, I've obtained half of the Phoenix's inheritance, so I can vaguely sense the other half. When I entered the inner layer for the first time, I created this cave residence on this rock wall because I sensed that the other half of the inheritance of the undying bird is hidden in the depths of this rock wall. Furthermore, I have indeed discovered a secret door. However, there is actually a very powerful formation outside that secret door. I think it's at least a heavenly ascension grand formation. I bombarded it for a while, but I couldn't break through the defense of the formation. At this point, Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign's eyes revealed a trace of sadness. Although he was strong, he knew nothing about formations. If he wanted to forcefully break through the formation, it would take a very long time. Moreover, the commotion of breaking through the formation was too great. At that time, the entire inner layer would be affected, and all the prisoners in the Undying Bird Purgatory would notice. Not only that, but the Phoenix people outside the Undying Bird Purgatory would also notice the abnormality. This was completely against Crepe Myrtle's Star Sovereign's wishes. Brother Crepe Myrtle, can you let me take a look at that formation? You know that I'm a divine array master. Maybe I can crack it. Zhuowen said. Crepe Myrtle's Star Sovereign sighed softly and nodded. He led Zhuowen into the depths of the cave residence. In the deepest part of the cave residence, there was a very hidden tunnel. The two of them followed the tunnel and slowly walked down. Soon, the two of them arrived at the end of the tunnel and stopped. What appeared in front of Zhuowen was an even more spacious underground area. At the end of this spacious area, there was a black gold door that was 10 feet tall. The surface of the black gold door emitted a pitch black and golden light. In addition, there was a relief of a huge flaming bird. Zhuowen guessed that this huge bird should be the relief of the Undying Bird. Brother Zhua, you can see it too. This huge black gold door is densely covered with powerful formations and restrictions. Moreover, this black gold door is not an ordinary thing. Its hardness is something I've never seen in my life, Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign said in a deep voice. Although Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign said so, he didn't have any hope that Zhuowen could crack the formation on the surface of the black gold door. When he was in the 8 heavens, he also knew that Zhuowen was proficient in formations. However, at that time, Zhuowen was only a 9th level formation master. Above the 9th level formation master was the 3rd step of Dao validation. The black gold door in front of him was the highest level of the 3rd step of Dao validation. It was a heaven level formation. How long had it been? Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign naturally didn't believe that Zhuowen's formation skills had reached the heaven-defying heaven level. In his opinion, Zhuowen's formation skills could reach the 1st step of Dao validation. He was already a genius. Zhuowen stood in front of the black gold door and observed for a while. Then he said indifferently, Brother Myrtle Star Sovereign, I can crack this formation, but it may take a lot of time. Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign nodded and said, Brother Zhua, I know that you're very talented in formations, but you've only studied formations for a short time. Although you can't crack the heaven-level formation now, you'll definitely be able to do it in the future. What? Zhuowen, what did you just say? Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign realized something and couldn't help but widen his eyes. He looked at Zhuowen and repeated what he had just said. Zhuowen's gaze was calm as he said, this should be a heaven-connecting grade defensive formation called the Emerald Jade Defense Formation. Although it's a rather high-level formation among heaven-connecting grade formations, and it'll be rather difficult for me to break through it. With my current level, I'll still be able to break through it completely. Brother Zhua, you don't have to show off in front of me because of our relationship. After all, this is a heaven-level formation. If you're not a heaven-level formation master, it's basically impossible to crack it. I know your formation skills are very strong, but before Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign could say anything, Zhuowen directly replied, Brother Myrtle Star Sovereign, I'm a heaven-level formation master. Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign opened his mouth slightly, not knowing what to say. He just stared blankly at Zhuowen. Brother Zhua, are you serious? Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign's eyes lit up with excitement. I won't joke about this kind of thing, Zhuowen said with a smile. Good, good. Brother Zhua, if you can crack the formation of this black gold gate, I, Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign, promise you that you can choose whatever you want from the inheritance of the Undying Bird. I only want the inheritance of the Undying Bird, and the rest of the Undying Bird's things can be yours. Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign laughed. Zhuowen waved his hand and said, "Brother Myrtle Star Sovereign, you're flattering me. If there's something I need in the inheritance of the undying bird, I'll take it. If there's no such thing, I won't touch your inheritance." Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign grinned and said expectantly, "Brother Zhuo, you're going to start now. Let's start now." Zhuowen walked to the black gold gate and sat down cross-legged. With a wave of his sleeve, he summoned beast bone formation discs. Chapter 3279. Possession 3 days later. Zhuowen suddenly opened his eyes, and his eyes flickered with a blazing and excited glow. With a wave of his sleeve, the beast bone formation disc violently slammed into the black gold door, like a whirlwind. With a cracking sound, the ripples on the surface of the black gold door collapsed into powder, revealing the original appearance of the black gold door behind the formation. It really broke. Crepe Myrtle Star's eyes narrowed, and his body trembled with excitement. Zhuowen put away the beast bone formation disc, his eyes revealing a trace of understanding. Heaven-piercing formation could be said to be very rare now. Every time Zhuowen deciphered a heaven-piercing formation, he would gain some enlightenment. Crepe Myrtle Star Monarch walked to the black gold door and pressed his right palm against it. A black flame that was so black that it was almost tangible emerged from his palm. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The carving of the undying bird on the black gold door seemed to come alive. It opened its eyes, spread its wings, and flew out of the door. Terrifying black flames burst out of its body, and it burrowed into Crepe Myrtle Star's palm. Creak! The moment the undying bird entered Crepe Myrtle Star's palm, the black gold door slowly opened. A wave of extremely rich heavenly law energy surged over, causing Zhuowen to feel a wave of refreshment and comfort. What rich heaven path energy! Zhuowen's eyes were filled with surprise. The heaven path energy inside the black gold door was so terrifying that he had never seen it before. He knew very well that if he cultivated in this environment, he would be able to achieve twice the result with half the effort. The efficiency would be very high. The two entered the black gold door and found a huge bird's nest burning with black flames in front of them. The appearance of this bird's nest was not much different from an ordinary bird's nest. The only difference was that this bird's nest was much bigger than any building. Moreover, the bird's nest was surrounded by black flames that seemed to never be extinguished. The corpse of the undying bird should be in this bird's nest. Crepe Myrtle Star's eyes were filled with ecstasy. He could not wait to rush towards the bird's nest. As soon as Zhuowen entered the black gold door, he immediately frowned. He felt that something was wrong. Just as he was about to warn Crepe Myrtle Star, the latter had already entered the bird's nest. "Brother Crepe Myrtle Star, wait. There's something strange here," Zhuowen said hurriedly. Unfortunately, as soon as Zhuowen finished speaking, Crepe Myrtle Star had already rushed into the bird's nest. What was strange was that when Crepe Myrtle Star entered, the terrifying black flames outside the bird's nest automatically, with no intention of Crepe Myrtle Star. Zhuowen helplessly, he followed Crepe Myrtle Star, and Crepe Myrtle Star 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 star. Wenli, star that Myrtle Star 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 star. Myrtle Star translation star 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 translation translation star stars translation 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 star translation 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 Myrtle Star house star 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 zhang star 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 and star. Zhuowen kicked with his right foot and dodged the Myrtle Star's rain in time. His eyes became cold and deep. He felt more and more strange. The bird's nest seemed to be intelligent. It allowed Crepe Myrtle Star to enter, but stopped him outside. The soul of the undying bird hasn't been completely destroyed by me. It's still alive, so it's controlling its nest? Zhuowen thought of a possibility, and his expression changed greatly. Originally, when he destroyed the soul of the undying bird at the entrance of the inner area. He thought that the soul of the undying bird had completely collapsed. Therefore, there would be no obstacles in entering the land of inheritance. However, he was wrong. The undying bird was really not simple. He had used all his trump cards, but he still could not completely destroy the soul of the undying bird. Oh no, Brother Crepe Myrtle is in danger. Zhuowen thought of something, and his expression changed slightly. He suddenly punched the bird's nest. The power of the Pangu's sacred body exploded. A terrifying wind swept out, and space and time exploded. Bang! 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 The black flames on the surface of the bird's nest blasted out like a cannonball and smashed onto Zhuowen's fist. The terrifying collision energy was like water ripples constantly spreading out in all directions. It looked very terrifying. Zhuowen did not hesitate to use the profound meaning to open the sky blade, and heaven and earth perished together. The destructive and sharp aura exploded at the same time, and the black flames around the bird's nest were directly annihilated. However, there were too many black flames around the bird's nest. They were mighty like waves, constantly sweeping toward Zhuowen as if they were going to drown Zhuowen. At this moment, Zhuowen used the torch dragon's eye and the fate space-time kill to narrowly avoid the attack of the terrifying black flames. Zhuowen did not fight the black flames of the bird's nest head-on. He knew that the black flames were the lifetime energy of the undying bird. If he fought head-on, he would only be at a disadvantage. He planned to use the torch dragon's eye to find the weakness of the bird's nest and directly enter it. The torch dragon's eye was the most powerful magic of the ancestral sorcerer candle dragon. It could see through any flaws and fabrications. The black flames of the undying bird were not inferior to the torch dragon's eye. Suddenly, Zhuowen's eyes lit up. Through the torch dragon's eye, he saw several flaws in the bird's nest. He found the most obvious one. After dodging the attack of the black flames, he took a step forward and entered that flaw. The black flames surged up, trying to stop Zhuowen from rushing into the bird's nest. Unfortunately, Zhuowen did not care. He used his body to resist the black flames and rushed into the bird's nest. The space in the bird's nest was very large. The moment Zhuowen entered the bird's nest, he summoned the Thunder Fire Sword, Blood Immortal Sword, and Sacrificial Death Sword. They surrounded him to protect his safety. However, what surprised Zhuowen was that the bird's nest did not have any terrifying black flames like the outside world. Instead, the heavenly Tao energy inside was richer. In addition, Zhuowen also noticed that there was a giant bird corpse lying in the middle of the bird's nest. The giant bird was covered in black feathers and burning with faint black flames. It was motionless. Zhuowen knew that this should be the corpse of the undying bird. At this moment, in front of the undying bird's head, Crepe Star Sovereign was slowly approaching. He stretched out his right hand and placed it between the undying bird's eyebrows. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. He took a step forward and immediately approached Crepe Star Sovereign and pulled him back. A black energy flickered between the undying bird's eyebrows. This black energy was constantly surging into Crepe Star Sovereign's body. Zhuowen knew at a glance that this black energy should be the soul of the undying bird. The undying bird was planning to possess Crepe Star Sovereign. Zhuowen did not hesitate to cut off the connection between the black energy and Crepe Star Sovereign. Crepe Star Sovereign spat out a mouthful of blood, and a sharp sound came from between the undying bird's eyebrows. The sound was filled with exasperation. "Damn it, you deserve to die." The undying bird's sharp voice rang out. Then a black energy suddenly swept out from between its eyebrows and disappeared instantly, entering Zhuowen's eyebrows. Zhuowen's attention was all on Crepe Star Sovereign. For a moment, He did not notice that the undying bird's soul had entered between his eyebrows. No, your goal is to possess me? Zhuowen suddenly realized something. The undying bird's soul possessed him very quickly. He could not believe it. If the undying bird wanted to possess Crepe Star Sovereign, it would have succeeded before he entered the bird's nest. However, it did not. Instead, it created the illusion of a slow possession. All of this was to lure Zhuowen to the undying bird's corpse. Chapter 3280. Inheritance. The undying bird's divine soul was very powerful. It was like a terrifying black flame, burning Zhuowen's divine soul and spreading through his sea of consciousness. Zhuowen's face was pale, and his eyes were filled with pain. The undying bird's divine soul was just too powerful. It was like a ball of fire that was scorching hot. If Zhuowen's divine soul wasn't so much stronger than an ordinary cultivator's, his divine soul and sea of consciousness would have started to crumble. Kid, your physical body isn't ordinary. Before you die, I'll give you a chance. Tell me the origin of your physical body. Don't try to fool me by telling me that your physical body is the Devourer King's. I can see that your physical body is many times stronger than the Devourer King's. Moreover, its nature is completely different. The undying bird's cold voice resounded in Zhuowen's sea of consciousness, shaking Zhuowen's mind. Zhuowen endured the discomfort in his sea of consciousness and said coldly, "You should have seen the origin of my physical body long ago, right? You still need me to tell you?" The undying bird sneered and said, "Of course I do. I'm just guessing. I'm not sure." Zhuowen only sneered and said nothing. "It seems like you're refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Then I don't need to ask you. I'll just take over your body and search your memories before I wipe out your divine soul." The undying bird sneered and didn't say anything else. It continued to wreak havoc in Zhuowen's sea of consciousness. Black flames filled Zhuowen's sea of consciousness. Terrifying heat surged up, causing Zhuowen's eyes to widen. He couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. But soon, the black flames that covered the entire sea of consciousness were drowned by an even more vast and terrifying energy. Then, the raging black flames were frozen in midair by this vast energy. The undying bird's spirit, which was flying in the sea of consciousness, was also suppressed by this terrifying energy. The undying bird's eyes were filled with fear. It looked left and right, feeling incredulous. With the strength of his divine soul, destroying Zhuowen's divine soul was more than enough. But now, in Zhuowen's divine soul, there was actually such a terrifying energy that was suppressing its entire body. This made the undying bird feel fear and disbelief. This kind of terrifying energy had already exceeded the scope of what the undying bird could withstand. Then, the undying bird saw a dazzling banner fly out from the depths of Zhuowen's sea of consciousness, especially the image of a giant drawn on the surface of the banner. It was so vivid that it seemed to have a spirit of its own. "It's the Panga banner." No, the undying bird could not believe it. It wanted to escape, but the pressure of the Panga banner was too terrifying. It firmly suppressed its divine soul, making it unable to move. In the end, the undying bird could only watch as its divine soul was suppressed by the Panga banner. Under the terrifying energy of the Panga banner, its divine soul slowly dissipated and disappeared. It turned into wisps of divine soul fragments that were absorbed by Zhuowen's sea of consciousness. With the nourishment of the undying bird's divine soul, Zhuowen's sea of consciousness gradually recovered and became even stronger than before. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes, and a sarcastic smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. In fact, when he knew that the undying bird intended to possess him, Zhuowen was not worried at all. This was because in his sea of consciousness there was such a terrifying thing as the Panga banner. Under this starry sky, There should not be many creatures that could hurt his divine soul, and the undying bird was no exception. Zhuowen looked at Crepe Myrtle Star, who was not far away. At this moment, Crepe Myrtle Star's face was pale and in pain. He had not woken up yet. Zhuowen pointed his right hand between Crepe Myrtle Star's eyebrows. With the remaining power of the Panga banner, he poured it into Crepe Myrtle Star's sea of consciousness and understood the remaining power of the undying bird's divine soul. Crepe Myrtle Star spat out a mouthful of blood and slowly opened his eyes. There was a look of horror in his eyes. Brother Joie, just now, Crepe Myrtle Star's eyes were filled with guilt. When his divine soul was possessed by the undying bird, he knew what was going on. Moreover, he had seen everything that had happened to Zhuowen just now. What he did not expect was that half of the undying bird's inheritance he had obtained turned out to be a trap. It was a trick of the undying bird to possess him. He knew very well that if it were not for Zhuowen, he would have died here today. Brother Joie, Crepe Myrtle, will never forget your life-saving grace. In the future, whatever Brother Joie wants me to do, Crepe Myrtle, will do. I will not say a word. Crepe Myrtle Star suddenly knelt on one knee on the ground. His eyes were filled with gratitude as he looked at Zhuowen. Zhuowen quickly helped Crepe Myrtle Star up and said, Brother Crepe Myrtle, you are my friend. How can I, Zhuowen, stand by and do nothing when you are in trouble? There is no need for such formalities. Otherwise, you will not treat me as a friend. Crepe Myrtle Star nodded, stood up, and said, Brother Joie, I will not say any more words of gratitude. I will always remember your kindness in my heart, and you will always be my friend. At this point, Crepe Myrtle Star looked at the undying bird's corpse not far away and said in a deep voice, Brother Joie, the undying bird's inheritance should be in its corpse. It was all thanks to you that I was able to subdue the undying bird's divine soul. I will leave half of the undying bird's inheritance to you. Zhuowen shook his head and said, Brother Crepe Myrtle, you have already obtained half of the undying bird's inheritance. This is your opportunity. I will not take away someone's beloved. Moreover, I have also obtained a very powerful inheritance. The undying bird's inheritance is useless to me. Crepe Myrtle Star hesitated for a moment, then gritted his teeth and said, All right. In Crepe Myrtle Star's opinion, even the undying bird's divine soul could not possess Zhuowen. He knew that the inheritance that Zhuowen had obtained must be extremely amazing. However, Crepe Myrtle Star firmly remembered this kindness in his heart. He did not dare to forget it. The two of them walked to the side of the undying bird's corpse. Zhuowen immediately felt that the undying bird's blood essence aura was extremely vigorous. Zhuowen clicked his tongue in wonder. The undying bird was indeed a famous divine beast from ancient times. Its blood essence was still so vigorous after being stored for so long. It was rare to see such a thing. Zhuowen stretched out his right hand and made a cut on the undying bird's wings. Immediately, blood gushed out. Zhuowen began to absorb the energy of the blood essence. He was pleasantly surprised to find that the energy of the blood essence had made his Pangu sacred body somewhat stronger. Brother Crepe Myrtle, the other half of the undying bird's inheritance is in its sea of consciousness. You only need to explore its sea of consciousness, and you should be able to obtain the other half of the inheritance. The blood essence of the undying bird is very beneficial to me, so I may need to use its energy to cultivate. As Zhuowen spoke, he did not wait for Crepe Myrtle Star's reaction. He sat cross-legged on the undying bird's corpse and made a large cut on the undying bird's back with his right hand. The gushing blood essence was absorbed by Zhuowen. He began to consolidate and improve his Pangu sacred body. The undying bird's divine soul had been destroyed by the Panga banner, so there was nothing in the undying bird's sea of consciousness that could threaten Crepe Myrtle Star. Therefore, he was relieved to let Crepe Myrtle Star explore the undying bird's sea of consciousness. The reason why he knew this was that after the undying bird's divine soul was shattered, he had obtained some of the undying bird's memories. Therefore, he knew that the other half of the inheritance was secretly stored in the depths of the undying bird's sea of consciousness. Chapter 3281. Phoenix Master, after obtaining the other half of the inheritance in the undying bird's consciousness, Crepe Myrtle Star sat not far from the undying bird's corpse and began to silently absorb the massive amount of information in the inheritance. Crepe Myrtle Star's eyes were filled with excitement. The inheritance of the undying bird was terrifying. He was confident that after fully accepting the inheritance, his cultivation would be able to break through to the late stage of the sky-reaching master. After all, his current cultivation was already at the peak of the middle stage of the sky-reaching master. The probability of breaking through was very high. Zhuowen was still sitting cross-legged on the undying bird's corpse. Around him, there was a thick blood mist. The blood mist constantly gushed out from the wounds on the undying bird's corpse and was constantly being absorbed by Zhuowen's body. In the process of absorbing the blood essence, Zhuowen's aura also became more and more terrifying. While Zhuowen and Crepe Myrtle Star were cultivating, the atmosphere of the Phoenix people outside the undying bird's purgatory seemed to be much gloomier. At this moment, most of the Phoenix people came out of seclusion and gathered in the huge square around the undying bird's purgatory. Feng Buming, the two guardians of Xuanhua, and the 7 fire deities stood in front of the Phoenix people. The atmosphere in the square was very solemn, but all the people standing in the square were ecstatic. Even Feng Buming, Xianhua, and the others who were standing at the front had looks of excitement and anticipation in their eyes. Whoosh! Suddenly, a stream of light appeared in the distant sky. The stream of light was getting closer and closer, and in an instant, it was close. Only then did the people realize that the stream of light was actually a huge and magnificent flying divine artifact. The flying divine artifact looked like a phoenix spreading its wings and flying in the sky. Its entire body was wrapped in powerful and blazing flames. At the head of the flying divine artifact, a purple-robed man stood as straight as a spear. His hands were behind his back, and he had a vast aura of disdain for the world. The moment the Phoenix people in the square saw the purple-robed man, their eyes were filled with fanaticism, and they all knelt on the ground. Feng Buming, the 2 guardians of Xuanhua, and the 7 fire deities, the higher-ups of the Phoenix people, knelt on one knee and said respectfully, "Welcome back, Phoenix Master." The purple-clothed man leaped out and slowly landed in front of Feng Buming and the others. With a wave of his sleeve, he put away the flying divine artifact that was suspended in midair. The purple-clothed man was the current Lord of the Phoenix. His name was Feng Lilua. Back then, she was a famous, terrifying genius in the ancient desolate heaven domain. This was especially true for Feng Lilua, who had a high-grade bloodline of the Phoenix people. Her bloodline far surpassed that of ordinary Phoenix people. Of course, Feng Lilua's bloodline was still inferior to Mu Qinshue's 99 Phoenix body. After all, the 99 Phoenix body surpassed the bloodline of any Phoenix people. It was a true top-quality bloodline. Feng Lilua frowned slightly as she glanced at Feng Buming and said, "Your body has collapsed before? This body of yours is something you refined on the spot, right? That's why you can't recover your cultivation at all. Even if you do recover in the future, it will have a huge impact on your future cultivation path." "Is this also Zhuowen's doing?" Feng Buming lowered his head and said shamefully, "Phoenix Master, Buming is useless. I can't believe that Zhuowen put me in such a difficult situation. Please punish me, Phoenix Master." Feng Lilua waved her hand and said, "After all, the Phoenix people are one of the top 10 clans of the ancient desolate Heaven domain. Although I've been in the heaven-accessing secret land all year round, my clan's power is here. Not many alien clans in the ancient desolate Heaven domain dare to provoke the Phoenix people. Today, this Zhuowen dared to provoke the Phoenix people. Today, I will kill him and my clan." "Oh, right, when you sent me the message, you said that Zhuowen was from the Devouring Clan. So, have you sent your troops to wipe out the Devouring Clan tribe?" Speaking of this, Feng Lilua clasped her hands behind her back, her face calm. "A while ago, we sent 10,000 elite troops to the Devouring Clan tribe. I think they've almost reached the Devouring Clan tribe and destroyed it." Feng Bumming's eyes sparkled with a gleam of satisfaction. "Well done. Since they dared to offend the Phoenix people, not only will they have to pay the price, but their entire clan will be exterminated. This is a benchmark for those who dare to offend our clan. Whoever dares to provoke the Phoenix people must be prepared to be exterminated," said Feng Lilua calmly. However, at this moment, Feng Bumming's communication jade token rang. Feng Bumming carefully looked at Feng Lilua. Seeing her nod to let him check the message, he took out the communication jade token. However, after checking the message, Feng Bumming's face darkened. "What's the message?" Feng Lilua couldn't help but ask as she could see Feng Bumming's grimace. Feng Bumming's eyes sparkled as he hurried to say, "Phoenix Master, the message from the front line says that the 10,000 elite troops we sent failed to attack the Devouring Clan tribe. Moreover, most of the elite troops of the Phoenix people were killed. Almost all of them were annihilated. From the message, I heard that the Devouring Clan tribe has a powerful heaven-crossing slaughtering formation. 10,000 elite troops aren't a match for this heaven-crossing slaughtering formation." Feng Lilua knitted her brows, her face displeased. Feng Bumming crouched on the ground and hurried to beg for forgiveness. "Phoenix Master, it's my fault. Bumming will take responsibility for it. This time, I'll send another batch of elite troops to destroy the entire Devouring Clan tribe." Feng Lilua shook her head. "No need. I'm afraid that the heaven-crossing slaughtering formation of the Devouring Clan was set up by Zhuowen. We don't need to send more people there. This Zhuowen is a talent. He's a heaven-crossing formation master. It's a pity to kill such a talent. It's better to let him and the entire Devouring Clan respect us as our masters. They will be our slaves forever." Although Feng Lilua wasn't happy with Zhuowen's behavior, after knowing that Zhuowen was a heaven-crossing formation master, she didn't want to kill him. Instead, she wanted to use Zhuowen. After all, there weren't many heaven-crossing formation masters in the entire ancient desolate heavenly realm. They were as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. In her eyes, if she killed Zhuowen, it would be a pity. It would be best if she could be used by the Phoenix people. "Phoenix Master is wise." Feng Bumming's eyes twinkled. Although he wanted to kill Zhuowen directly, since the Phoenix Master had spoken, he didn't dare to talk nonsense. "Booming, you mentioned in the message that Zhuowen had set up 3 complementary Heaven Ascension Great Formations outside the Undying Bird Purgatory. Is this true?" Although Feng Lilua was asking, his gaze had already passed the crowd and landed on the Undying Bird Purgatory behind the crowd. With her eyesight, she could see the ripples of the formation on the surface of the Phoenix Purgatory. Moreover, the ripples were extremely powerful. It wasn't something that could be created by an ordinary formation. Feng Bumming didn't dare to be negligent. He led the 2 guardians and the 7 fire gods to the Phoenix Purgatory. The members of the Phoenix clan in the square also opened up a path for him, their eyes filled with reverence. Arriving in front of the Phoenix Purgatory, Feng Lilua extended her right hand and pressed on the surface of the phoenix purgatory. Instantly, the dense formation ripples spread out, hindering her right hand from moving forward. Feng Lilua snorted coldly. A terrifying purple flame gushed out of her right palm and hit the formation ripples. Chapter 3282. Monster Territory Bang. The stalemate between Feng Lilua and the formation did not last long before it exploded with a loud boom. Terrifying ripples spread out, and many of the Phoenix clansmen in the plaza involuntarily groaned and retreated. Feng Lilua took a few steps back, her clothes fluttering in the wind. It's really 3 Heaven Passage great formations. These 3 great formations are interconnected and complement each other. Their power is terrifying. It's not something an ordinary Heaven Passage master can break. Speaking of this, Feng Lilua's eyes were filled with excitement. She said, Zhuowen's level is very high. He's even higher than an ordinary Heaven Passage Divine Array master. We must use him. Otherwise, we can only kill him. He Xian said in a low voice, Phoenix Master, these 3 great formations are impregnable. Shuehua and I tried to break them together, but we failed. We were even injured by the backlash. Phoenix Master, do you have the confidence to break these 3 great formations? Feng Lilua's eyes were filled with pride. She said, I can break these 3 great formations by force, but the price I have to pay is too high. It's not worth it. We only need to wait for Zhuowen to leave the undying bird purgatory. At that time, he will break these 3 great formations. Feng Buming, Xianhua, and the others were enlightened. Feng Lilua was right. Why did they have to break the great formations? Wasn't it the same if they waited for Zhuowen to come out? Phoenix Master is brilliant. Feng Buming, Xianhua, and the others were impressed. Oh, right, Phoenix Master, what should we do with the Devouring Clan? Feng Buming cupped his hands and asked, Don't worry about the Devouring Clan. I'm interested in Zhuowen. There's no need to make enemies with him now. If we can use him, there's no need to deal with the Devouring Clan. If we can't use him, it won't be too late to deal with him. Feng Lilua said indifferently. Although Feng Buming was unwilling, he did not dare to disobey Feng Lilua's order. Next, Feng Buming, Xuanhua, and the others began to disperse the many Phoenix people in the square, leaving only a small number of elites to guard outside the Phoenix Purgatory and observe the movements of the Phoenix Purgatory at any time. After doing these, Zhuowen said to the Profound Fire 2 protectors, 2 protectors, the mission of monitoring the undying bird purgatory will be handed over to you 2. Thank you for your kindness, Phoenix Master. We will do our best. The 2 guardians of Xuanhua were overwhelmed by the favor. Feng Lilua nodded. Then she looked at Feng Buming, who was a little uneasy, and said indifferently, Buming, when you advanced to the early stage of Master Tongtian, I was very gratified. But now you've disappointed me. Feng Buming's body trembled as he knelt on the ground, not daring to speak. Get up. The Sorcerer's Song gathering is about to begin. You're the most important person to the Phoenix people. But you ended up like this. Feng Lilua snorted coldly and said, with your current state, not to mention getting a spot, it would be difficult for you to even make it through the first round. Feng Buming was still kneeling on the ground, not saying a word. However, his body was trembling much more obviously. Feng Lilua looked at the trembling Feng Buming and sighed softly. Get up. Before the Sorcerer's Song gathering begins, I'll refine your physical body. You can stay by my side during this time. Feng Buming quickly kowtowed and said excitedly, Thank you for your forgiveness, Phoenix Master. This time, you must get a spot in the Sorcerer's Song gathering. Otherwise, I won't let you go. Feng Lilua said indifferently. Feng Buming's heart trembled as he quickly agreed. With Phoenix Master's help, Buming should be able to climb back to the peak. The two guardians of Xuanhua looked at Feng Lilua and Feng Bumming, who were leaving, and nodded secretly. Just as Zhuowen was cultivating in the undying bird purgatory outside the primitive heavenly realm, the former 8 heavenly realms, the current demon realm, welcomed 3 uninvited guests. These 3 uninvited guests happened to be the Grand Elder of the Phoenix people, the 3rd Elder of the clan, and Mu Qinxue, who looked a little dazed. At this moment, the 3 of them had just arrived at the border of the demon realm and met an extremely powerful demon clan member. This demon clan member was wearing a thick golden armor. His skin was golden yellow, and there were streaks of hideous blood marks on his cheeks. This demon clan member stopped the Grand Elder, and the other 2. His gaze was calm, as if he had been waiting for the 3 of them. "Are you the Grand Elder of the Phoenix people, Muyu?" The golden-armored man cupped his hands at Grand Elder Muyu and asked the obvious. Muyu did not dare to be negligent. She cupped her hands and said, "I'm Muyu of the Phoenix people. May I know your name, fellow cultivator?" "I'm Yao Xian, one of the 99 demon shamans under the demon Saint Donghuang Tai." The golden-armored man smiled faintly. Muyu's gaze turned serious when she heard that. She had some understanding of the origin of the 99 demon shamans. She knew that the 99 demon shamans were actually the 99 great shaman corpses that were trapped in the 9-story demon tower. However, they were refined into demon shamans by the Donghuang Tai's supreme means. They were completely under his command. Moreover, the weakest of the 99 demon shamans was at the early stage of the Master of Heaven. They were a very terrifying force that guarded the Donghuang Tai. In fact, when she met Yao Xian, Muyu realized that Yao Xian's strength was definitely not weaker than hers. Instead, he gave her a very dangerous feeling. She knew that Yao Xian was at least at the middle stage of the Master of Heaven. "Muyu has long heard of your great name. This time, we're here to visit the Demon Saint. I believe the Demon Saint already knows about our origins, right?" Muyu said. Yao Xian nodded and said, "The Demon Saint has already instructed me to do this. You're here to investigate the location of the Heavenly Armor Planet, right?" The location of the Heavenly Armor Planet is not within the demon realm. It's in the extraterritorial starry sky, outside the demon realm. But we also only know the approximate location. As for the exact location, we're not clear. As he said, Yao Xian took out a jade slip and handed it to Muyu, saying, "What's recorded here is the approximate location. You can go and look according to the instructions." Muyu received the jade slip and cupped her fists at Yao Xian. After expressing her gratitude, she took out a jade bottle and said, "In accordance with the Demon Saint's request, I brought this drop of phoenix blood." Yao Xian received the jade bottle, his gaze clearly revealing a look of excitement. After checking that there were no errors, Yao Xian cupped his fists and said, "Thank you for your hard work, Grand Elder. Yao Xian will take my leave first. I still have to report to the Demon Saint." Finished talking, Yao Xian left very straightforwardly. Muyu did not urge him to stay either. Instead, after checking the jade slip, she chose a direction and sped off. Before she came to the demon realm, she had already investigated Mu Qinxue's origins clearly long ago. This woman was a native of the only life planet in the extraterritorial starry sky, the Heavenly Armor Planet. It was just that the Heavenly Armor Planet was said to have been refined by that Zhuowen later. It should not be in the extraterritorial starry sky now. But what Muyu was searching for was not the Heavenly Armor Planet, but the part of the starry sky that gave birth to the Heavenly Armor Planet. She was very clear that the place that could give birth to the 99 Phoenix physique bloodline definitely contained a secret. Chapter 3283. Eastern Emperor, Tai, Grand Elder. This is really strange. We suddenly came to the demon realm, but Eastern Emperor Tai didn't ask us anything. He just sent a demon shaman to get the phoenix blood. On the way to the extraterritorial starry sky, the third elder, Anyen, looked puzzled and asked the Grand Elder beside him. Grand Elder Mu, you had been frowning. Now that third elder Anyen asked, she was silent for a while and said, I've never met Eastern Emperor Tai, but I heard from the Phoenix Master that Eastern Emperor Tai is an expert from the ancient times. He's an expert from the same era as our ancestor, the Phoenix. He's a supreme expert who has experienced countless disasters. He's definitely not someone to be trifled with. His actions this time are really unexpected. I thought he would invite us to the demon realm, but he didn't. He just sent a demon shaman. He didn't even say a word of invitation. Speaking of this, Muyu's frown deepened. Grand Elder, isn't this better? If we enter the demon realm, we'll be entering the demon race's hinterland. If the demon race has evil intentions towards us, then we'll be in trouble. This situation is just right for us. Third Elder didn't understand Grand Elder's worries. Muyu shook her head and said, I hope so. It should be this part of the starry sky. Suddenly, Muyu stopped at a part of the starry sky. This part of the starry sky was filled with densely packed rubble of different sizes. Other than that, there were many dim planets in the distance. These planets were called dead planets by the cultivators of the 8 heavens. Dead planets were the opposite of life planets. There were no living creatures or plants on dead planets. The entire surface of the planet was filled with desolation. There's nothing in this part of the starry sky. Grand Elder, are you sure it's here? Third Elder asked with a frown. I've checked Mu Qin Shui's memories. Back then, Heavenly Armor Star was here. However, Heavenly Armor Star was taken away by Zhuowen, so now there are only countless rocks here. Great Clan Elder said, with certainty. Next, let's check if there's any aura related to the Phoenix in this part of the starry sky. As the Great Elder spoke, he took out a fiery red mirror from his spirit ring. The fiery red mirror looked like a ball of raging flames, and the surface of the mirror was blood red like fresh blood, adding a strange aura to it. The Grand Elder formed a seal with both hands, and the surface of the mirror began to burn with flames. The flames burned more and more vigorously. In an instant, the flames turned into a sea of fire that spread out in all directions, instantly enveloping the entire starry sky. The sea of fire lasted for about 10 breaths of time before it swiftly shrank. Great Clan Elder Mu was overjoyed when he saw the sea of fire shrink. This mirror was refined from the blood essence of the phoenix, so it was very sensitive to the aura of the phoenix. Once the aura of the phoenix was present, the sea of fire gushing out of the mirror would quickly shrink to the source of the aura of the phoenix. But now, only 10 breaths of time had passed, and the sea of fire had shrunk. This proved that there was indeed the aura of a phoenix in this place. When the sea of fire finally condensed into a thumb-sized fire spot, this fire spot suddenly expanded, and finally formed a fire vortex that was as tall as a person. There really is another world under this starry sky. The Grand Elder and the Third Elder were overjoyed. They didn't travel thousands of miles to the demon realm in vain. Just as the Grand Elder and the Third Elder were about to step into the fire vortex and enter the other world inside the vortex, suddenly 2 terrifying fire pillars shot out from the fire vortex. These 2 fire pillars condensed a terrifying fire energy, and they respectively blasted towards the Grand Elder and the Third Elder. The Grand Elder and the Third Elder's faces changed greatly, and they both used their natal divine artifacts to attack the 2 fire pillars. Bang! Bang! The power of these 2 fire pillars was too terrifying. The Grand Elder and the Third Elder both groaned at the same time, and they couldn't help but retreat. The moment the two of them retreated, the fire vortex actually moved quickly, brushing past the Grand Elder and the Third Elder, and landed on Mu Chinshue, who was behind them. At this moment, Mu Chinshue's eyes were still lifeless, and she was frozen in place, not knowing how to dodge. After the fire vortex swallowed Mu Chinshue, it quickly dissipated. Damn it! The Grand Elder and the Third Elder's faces changed greatly. The moment the fire vortex dissipated, they ignored the injuries they suffered and rushed towards the fire vortex. Unfortunately, when the two of them rushed in front of the fire vortex had already completely dissipated, and it disappeared. The Grand Elder was flustered and exasperated, and he quickly used the mirror in his hand to summon the Sea of Fire again. The Sea of Fire spread in all directions, and it quickly spread to the limit. But this time, the Sea of Fire didn't shrink after dozens of breaths. The Grand Elder didn't believe it, and he continued to maintain the Sea of Fire. After several minutes, the Sea of Fire still didn't shrink. Grand Elder, I'm afraid that the Phoenix's aura has already disappeared from this starry sky. This is really inconceivable. That must be a mysterious world, and there's even a spirituality that escaped. The Third Elder felt that it was inconceivable. The Grand Elder, Mu, Yu was a little dejected. She didn't expect that such an unforeseen event would happen, and it really caught her off guard. Now, the entrance to the mysterious world had already escaped, and Mu Chinshue was also pulled into the mysterious world, and all of a sudden, all of the clues were lost. I don't believe that the mysterious world will really escape just because of this. Mu Yu was very unwilling. She gritted her teeth and rushed to another place, summoning the Sea of Fire again to search for the Phoenix's aura that had just appeared. She changed her position again and again, but unfortunately, all she got in return was failure. At the same time, in the darkness of the starry sky, two figures passed through the layers of void and landed in the starry sky, where Mu Yu and the others were. If one looked closer, one could see that one of the two figures was a burly man in golden armor. It was Yao Xian, who had met with the Grand Elder Mu Yu and the others previously. The figure standing beside Yao Xian was a man with a slender figure. He wore a long black robe, and there were golden lines at every corner of the long robe. However, this man wore a large hoodie on his head, and it covered his entire face, so it was impossible to see his face clearly. This man wearing a black robe with golden edges was the master of the entire devil realm, Dong Huang Tai. Yao Xian stood beside Dong Huang Tai, and he didn't dare to say anything. His eyes were filled with reverence. Sir, it seems that there should be something related to the ancient divine beast, the phoenix, in this starry sky. As expected, these two phoenix people didn't come here with good intentions. Should we take them down? Yao Xian asked. There's no need. After all, I took their phoenix blood. Just treat it as compensation for their impudence in my territory. As long as it's not too much, there's no need to pursue it. However, I'm very curious about the human that the Phoenix people brought here by Mu Yu. He was actually chosen by the Phoenix. This is a little beyond my expectations. Dong Huang Tai said calmly. Yao Xian's eyes flickered, and he said hesitantly, Sir, do you mean that the divine beast, the Phoenix, really exists in this starry sky? As far as I know, the Phoenix should have already fallen. It's impossible for it to come back to life. Yes, the Phoenix has indeed fallen, but its inheritance has been passed down, and that human is the one chosen by the Phoenix. No wonder that human has the 99 Phoenix body. Yao Xian, we don't have to care about this anymore. Let's go back. Chapter 3284. Taishian's spiritual elixir of creation in the depths of the Phoenix's purgatory. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes in the nest that was burning with black flames. In the depths of his eyes, there was intense excitement. A vast and terrifying aura surged out from his body. It was extremely violent and powerful. Zhuowen's aura rose steadily. The aura was so terrifying that it seemed to be real. It gathered into an extremely terrifying storm. The storm became more and more terrifying and suddenly soared into the sky. Bang! 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 The huge bird's nest was torn into countless pieces by this terrifying storm. As for the black flames that lingered around the nest, they were constantly being suppressed and weakened by the terrifying storm. In the end, the black flames were completely annihilated by the terrifying aura storm. Crepe Star, who was sitting cross-legged in the nest, was also awakened by the terrifying aura. When he saw the nest that had been turned into ruins, he could not help but open his mouth in surprise. He was well aware of how terrifying the undying bird's nest was and how endless the black flames outside were. But now it was annihilated. It was too terrifying. Crepe Star stood up and looked at the figure standing on the phoenix's corpse in awe. He also noticed that the corpse of the undying bird had completely shriveled up. He knew that the phoenix's blood essence energy had been completely absorbed by Zhuowen. It's worthy of being an ancient divine beast. The blood essence energy contained in its body is so vast and powerful. Zhuowen was so happy that he had an impulse to roar. After absorbing the phoenix's blood essence energy, the level of his Pangu's sacred body did continue to increase. It broke through from the peak of the early stage of 7 stars to the middle stage, then the late stage, and finally the peak. This made Zhuowen very surprised. Originally, he was already very happy that the undying bird's blood essence energy could raise him to the late stage of 7 star, but he did not expect that it would directly raise him to the peak of 7 star. The Pangu's sacred body had reached the peak of the 7 stars. Zhuowen's qualities had been improved in all aspects. Even his magic skills had been greatly improved. Zhuowen was now confident that he could fight against a sky-reaching master at the middle stage without relying on any trump cards. He even had a great chance of defeating him. Of course, if he used all kinds of trump cards, Zhuowen was confident that he could fight against a sky-reaching master at the late stage. Brother Zhuo, congratulations on your breakthrough. Purple Star, Sovereign, hurriedly walked over to congratulate Zhuowen. Zhuowen waved his hand and said with a smile, "It's all thanks to the phoenix's blood essence. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to advance so quickly." Then Zhuowen looked Star and said, "Brother Crepe Star, brother, you should have received the phoenix's inheritance. You are you?" Crepe Star smiled bitterly and said, "I should be half a step into the sky-reaching master at the late stage, but I'm still a little short. I can't completely break through the shackles." Hearing this, Zhuowen nodded and said, "Brother Crepe Star, you should only need a little bit of opportunity to smoothly advance. Now, I'll give you that opportunity." Crepe Star was stunned. He did not understand what Zhuowen meant. Opportunities to break through were hard to come by. Zhuowen said that he would give him an opportunity. Was this a joke? "Brother Crepe Star, have you heard of the Taishan Spirit Creation Elixir?" Zhuowen asked with a smile. Of course, the Taishan Spirit Creation Elixir should be a sky-reaching master at the late stage. It's very precious, and it's said that after swallowing the Taishan Spirit Creation Elixir, a trace of creation power will be born in the body. This creation power can give the person who consumes the elixir the opportunity to extend his comprehension and break through the realm in a short time. It's said that it's suitable for cultivators at the late stage of the sky-reaching master and below. Crepe Star seemed to have thought of something. He looked at Zhuowen in disbelief and said, "Brother Zhuo, do you have this kind of elixir?" Zhuowen shook his head. Crepestar immediately looked disappointed. Although I have the herbs to refine the Taishan spirit creation elixir, Zhuowen said. Crepestar was a little depressed and said, "What's the use of having the herbs? The Taishan spirit creation elixir is a sky-reaching master at the late stage. It's very difficult for an ordinary sky-reaching alchemist to refine it. Sigh, if only there was a sky-reaching alchemist now." Zhuowen shrugged and took out the Emperor elixir furnace and the herbs for the Taishan spirit creation elixir. "Brother Zhuo, what are you doing?" Crepestar noticed that something was wrong and hurriedly asked. "Of course it's alchemy. The opportunity I'm talking about is the Taishan spirit creation elixir. I plan to refine this elixir for you," Zhuowen said. The Taishan spirit creation elixir is a sky-reaching master. "Brother Zhuo, are you also a sky-reaching alchemist?" Crepestar asked suspiciously. "Yes. Is there a problem?" Zhuowen said. Crepestar was speechless, but he was shocked in his heart. He had been with Zhuowen for a period of time and knew Zhuowen's character very well. He knew that Zhuowen was definitely not the kind of person who would boast. In other words, what Zhuowen said about him being a sky-reaching alchemist was true. Thinking of this, Crepestar's heart was very complicated. It was more disbelief. He already knew that Zhuowen was a sky-reaching formation Tao divine master. This was already heaven-defying enough. But now, Zhuowen, this guy, was actually also a sky-reaching alchemist. My God, both Formation Tao and Alchemy Tao reached sky-reaching Alchemy Tao. In the countless years of evolution of this starry sky, it was very rare for such a freak to appear. Furthermore, Crepestar also knew that several hundred years ago, when Zhuowen was still in the 8 heavens, this guy's Formation Tao and Alchemy Tao had not corroborated Tao. In other words, this guy only used several hundred years to reach sky-reaching Alchemy Tao, Formation Tao, and cultivation. This could no longer be described as freakish. It was freakish. Thinking of this, Crepestar's gaze when looking at Zhuowen was filled with awe. He originally thought that relying on the undying bird's inheritance, his cultivation speed was already terrifying enough. But this guy in front of him was clearly God knows how many times more impressive than him. Speaking of which, Crepestar also felt somewhat frustrated in his heart. Back when he was in the 8 heavens, he was already inferior to Zhuowen. Now that they met again, he was still inferior to Zhuowen, and the gap between them was getting bigger and bigger. This was really annoying. "Boy, you finally opened the furnace to refine elixirs again. I'm so hungry and thirsty." The elixir emperor Turtle quickly rushed out of the elixir furnace and looked at Zhuowen hungrily. Zhuowen was speechless. He asked the elixir emperor Turtle to prepare quickly while he ignited the divine fire and began to calm down. He took out the true elixir array record, intending to use the power of the record to refine this divine elixir. This was the first time he had refined a sky-reaching, late-stage divine elixir. In fact, his current level was not enough. He had to use the true elixir array record to refine it by force. Before leaving the Phoenix Purgatory, Zhuowen had to raise the cultivation of Crepe Myrtle's Star Sovereign. He heard from Crepestar that the Phoenix Master of the Phoenix people had returned to the primitive heavenly realm from the sky-reaching secret land. As the supreme expert of the Phoenix people, the Phoenix Master must be at the late stage of sky-reaching master. If such an expert cooperated with the experts of the Phoenix people to besiege him, he would definitely be defeated. The only chance was for Crepestar to also reach the late stage of sky-reaching master and help him restrain the Phoenix Master. The Phoenix people dared to torture Mu Qinxue in the Phoenix Purgatory. Zhuowen would not let go of this debt. He would turn the Phoenix people upside down. Chapter 3285. Undead, which Fire Zhuo when ignited his divine flame and opened the cauldron. The True Alchemy Array record also floated above his head. Streaks of information turned into golden characters that entered the space between his eyebrows. Zhuowen comprehended the True Alchemy Array record while skillfully placing the herbs he had prepared into the cauldron in an orderly manner. When all the herbs were placed into the cauldron, Zhuowen formed a seal with both hands and used the alchemy art. Time gradually passed, and soon, several days had passed. The lid of the Imperial Alchemy Cauldron began to emit a mist. The mist was filled with dense medicinal energy. Smelling the medicinal energy, Crepe Myrtle Star felt refreshed. Crepe Myrtle Star was excited. He knew that Zhuowen was likely to succeed this time. Bang! Suddenly, the mist emitted from the cauldron lid turned pitch black. Zhuowen's expression changed slightly. He lifted the lid of the cauldron and terrifying black smoke poured out. It looked like a huge black pillar. F***CK. I say, Zhuowen, why didn't you show any signs of failure? I'm choking to death. Beside the Imperial Alchemy Cauldron, the Imperial Alchemy Turtle was caught off guard. It was enveloped by the thick black smoke and coughed repeatedly. Tears streamed down its face as it hurriedly escaped. Crepe Myrtle Star sighed. Although he didn't know alchemy, he knew that Zhuowen had failed. He wanted to comfort Zhuowen, but he soon saw that Zhuowen was standing there with his eyes narrowed, as if he was thinking about something. He didn't disturb him. He knew that Zhuowen was thinking about the reason for his failure. Zhuowen stood in place for a full 7 days and 7 nights. Finally, he moved. Zhuowen walked to the side of the Imperial Alchemy Cauldron. With a wave of his sleeve, he took out another set of herbs for the Profound Creation Spirit Pill. Imperial Alchemy Turtle, help me control the fire. Zhuowen instructed the Imperial Alchemy Turtle beside him. Then, he ignited the divine fire under the Imperial Alchemy Cauldron. The Imperial Alchemy Turtle's black eyes were filled with fear. It asked cautiously, "Kid, you won't blow up the cauldron again, will you? If you don't have the confidence, don't refine it first. Let's talk about it later. Cut the crap. Control the fire. Otherwise, you won't be able to refine pills in the future." Zhuowen said. When the Imperial Alchemy Turtle heard this, it helped Zhuowen to control the fire. The Imperial Alchemy Cauldron. Alchemy Cauldron. Com didn't have the Alchemy Cauldrons. Alchemy Studio Cauldron Time. Time instead Time Star. Started Book Studio instead. Art Studio. Studio Lu Lu E Studio. Time. Liu Art. Studio. Art Hisu which he a Chi Dan was. You which sect. Heart Liu Pill was. After a while, his hands moved very quickly as he placed the medicinal herbs around him into the Emperor Pill Furnace in an orderly manner. The speed at which he threw the herbs was very fast. In less than 5 breaths of time, all the herbs were thrown into the pill furnace. Zhuowen, on the other hand, was constantly forming the alchemy hand seal. His divine sense was also probing into the alchemy cauldron to observe the minute changes within. For the second time, Zhuowen spent 5 days before the pill furnace once again emitted a medicinal fragrance. The pill emperor furnace was very cautious. After smelling the medicinal fragrance, it began to quietly retreat. It was afraid that if the refinement failed again, it would suffer a calamity. However, Zhuowen wouldn't let this guy ruin his pill refinement, so he pulled it back and secretly warned it before continuing to form pill seals. The medicinal fragrance grew stronger and stronger, filling the entire underground space. The instant the medicinal fragrance reached its peak, Zhuowen's eyes burst forth with a bright light. His right hand suddenly slapped the lid of the furnace. With a bang, the lid of the cauldron was blown away. 12 divine pills shot out from the inside of the cauldron. Zhuowen took out a jade bottle and stored these 12 divine pills inside without any trace of politeness. Zhuowen took out a divine pill and threw it to the delighted pill emperor Turtle. Then he took out 5 more and threw them to Crepe Star Sovereign. Crepe Star Sovereign took the divine pills in a daze. When he confirmed that the divine pills in his hand were indeed Taishan spiritual creation pills, he was truly shocked. It's actually a special grade Taishan spiritual creation pill. Crepe Star Sovereign was stunned. He hurriedly returned 4 of the Taishan spiritual creation pills to Zhuowen. Brother Crepe Star, you have obtained the inheritance of the undying bird. Its bloodline is extraordinary. The difficulty of advancing will definitely be much higher than that of ordinary cultivators. These divine pills are mainly given to you to ensure that nothing goes wrong. Zhuowen said. Crepe Star Sovereign gratefully accepted the 5 Taishan spiritual creation pills. Brother Zhuo, I won't say any words of gratitude. After I successfully advance, I will definitely repay Brother Zhuo's kindness. After saying that, Crepe Star Sovereign went straight to a nearby cave. After casually setting up a defensive restriction, he went into seclusion to cultivate. Zhuowen did not intend to disturb Crepe Star Sovereign. He also found a cave. After throwing out a large pile of Heavenly Path origin crystals, he began to absorb the energy, intending to consolidate the realm of the newly advanced Pangu's sacred body. Zhuowen spent 3 days to consolidate the realm of the Pangu's sacred body, which was at the peak of the 7 stars realm. He saw that Crepe Star Sovereign was still in seclusion, beginning to comprehend the 5 great mysteries that he had comprehended from the Pangu banner. The 5 great mysteries were the sky-opening blade, the infinite primordial chaos, the mysterious light of creation, the death of heaven and earth, and the Pangu's sacred might. Zhuowen had already learned the first 4 great mysteries and could use them flexibly. After the advancement of the Pangu's sacred body, the power of the mysteries had naturally increased a lot. What he was most interested in was the 5th great mystery, the Pangu's sacred might. According to the introduction of the mysteries, when he used the Pangu's sacred might, he could summon the shadow of Pangu, erupt with supreme power, and crush everything. However, the conditions to use the mysteries were too harsh. At the very least, he had to have a 7 stars Pangu sacred body, and he could only barely withstand the Pangu sacred might. If he used it for too long, his Pangu sacred body would collapse. This showed how terrifying the mysteries were. This time, Zhuowen was mainly comprehending the Pangu's sacred might. The more he comprehended, the more he felt the terror of the Pangu's sacred might. However, he was also afraid of the side effects of the Pangu's sacred might. Such a terrifying mysteries could not be used easily unless it was a real life and death situation. It did not take Zhuowen long to comprehend the Pangu's sacred might. After all, the 5 great mysteries were originally engraved in his mind by the Pangu banner. He could use them at any time if he wanted to. It was just that he could use the 5 great mysteries more accurately if he comprehended them. After absorbing the blood essence of the undying bird, the energy of the Zhurong poisonous insect in my body has mutated. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. He opened his right palm, and a deep black flame emerged in his palm. The aura of the black flame was very similar to the flame of the undying bird, but it was more terrifying. This was because the flame had mutated from the flame energy of both the undying bird and the Zhurong poisonous insect. It was extremely powerful, much more powerful than Zhuowen's own divine fire. Both the undying bird and the Zhurong poisonous insect were proficient in fire energy. The fusion of the two was tantamount to a combination of 2 powerful forces. The mutated flame naturally would not be weak. This flame will be called the Undying Wizard Flame from now on. Zhuowen named the flame with a smile. Suddenly, he stopped smiling and took out a Ho-E divine arrow from the macro world. Chapter 3286. Outer Layer Zhuowen had a total of 4 Ho-E divine arrows. However, there was only one Ho-E divine arrow in its perfect state, and it was the one that the Black King had helped him remove the golden crow's blood from its surface. As for the other 3 Ho-E divine arrows, he had obtained them after entering the eldritch heavenly realm. The surface of the arrows was more or less stained with the golden crow's blood, which hindered the power of the Ho-E divine arrows. He had thought of using the divine fire to remove the golden crow's blood. However, the effect was minimal. Although his divine fire could refine the blood, the speed was too slow. It could even be said to be extremely slow. Now, the immortal sorcerer fire was much more powerful than his own divine fire. He felt that the immortal sorcerer fire would be much better at removing the golden crow's blood. Thinking of this, Zhuowen took out the Ho-E divine arrow and placed it in his palm. A ball of pitch-black flame gushed out of his palm and instantly enveloped the Ho-E divine arrow. Zhuowen was pleasantly surprised to find that the golden crow's blood on the surface of the Ho-E divine arrow was gradually dissipating under the black flame. It is indeed effective. Zhuowen was pleasantly surprised. The immortal sorcerer fire could really remove the golden crow's blood, and the effect was so obvious. At the current speed, the immortal sorcerer fire should be able to remove all the golden crow's blood from the surface of the Ho-E divine arrow in a few hours. After a few hours, the golden crow's blood on the surface of the Ho-E divine arrow in Zhuowen's hand gradually disappeared, revealing the original appearance of the Ho-E divine arrow. Zhuowen forcibly suppressed the surging aura of the Ho-E divine arrow. After putting away the Ho-E divine arrow, he took out the second one and continued to use the immortal sorcerer fire to remove the golden crow's blood. In this way, Zhuowen spent most of the day removing all the golden crow's blood from the surface of the 3 Ho-E divine arrows. After doing this, Zhuowen let out a sigh of relief. His eyes were filled with excitement. Furthermore, he wanted to see if he could draw the bow to the end after his Pangu's sacred body had reached the peak of the 7 stars realm. Zhuowen put away the Ho-E divine arrow and took out the Ho-E divine bow. Holding the bow in his left hand and the bowstring in his right hand, he pulled it back. A terrifying killing intent gushed out, forming gusts of astral winds that swept over. Zhuowen's hair fluttered in the wind. In one breath, Zhuowen had reached half the distance. He felt a strong resistance. He didn't care about that. With a sudden tug, he pulled the bowstring to 2/3 of its length. At this moment, the resistance had already reached a terrifying level. The killing intent that erupted from the E-Divine bow had also reached an extremely shocking level. Zhuowen's right hand began to tremble. He continued to pull the bowstring, but the angle was very slow. When Zhuowen pulled the bowstring to 3/4 of its length, the corner of his eyes twitched. A strong pressure accompanied by killing intent pressed down on him from all directions, causing him to involuntarily spit out a mouthful of blood. Zhuowen hurriedly released the bowstring, only to hear a thunderous sound explode in the air. Moreover, the sound of thunder became denser and louder. In midair, there was a continuous roar of thunder. The cave that Zhuowen was in shook violently. Then it began to collapse. Countless gravel fell from the surroundings. Zhuowen didn't stay any longer and rushed out of the cave. The moment he left the cave collapsed. Phew! It seems that I can only pull the bowstring to 3/4 of its length. Otherwise, I will easily be injured by the backlash. Zhuowen swallowed a healing pill and suppressed the injuries in his body in time. His eyes were full of fear. He knew that it was too early for him to fully draw the bowstring. Of course, if he forced himself to do so, the only result would be that he would be seriously injured. "Brother Zhua, you're out." A voice attracted Zhuowen's attention. Zhuowen raised his head and saw Crepe Star slowly flying over from the sky. At this moment, Crepe Star's figure was slightly battered and exhausted. Zhuowen could tell at a glance that Crepe Star should have just advanced not long ago. The aura on his body was rather chaotic, but it was very powerful. It was much more powerful than before. Brother Crepe Star, congratulations on your successful advancement. Zhuowen congratulated. Crepe Star couldn't help but laugh and said, "This is all thanks to Brother Shua's Taishian Creation Spirit Pills. This time, I've advanced just in time to get those 5 Taishian Creation Spirit Pills. Fortunately, Brother Zhua, you insisted on giving those 5 Taishian Creation Spirit Pills to me. Otherwise, I might have failed this time." Zhuowen smiled and didn't say anything. He didn't talk too much about the Taishian Creation Spirit Pills. Instead, he changed the topic and said, "Brother Crepe Star, after you got the inheritance of the undying bird, you should know how to leave this undying bird purgatory, right? How should we leave next?" Well, about leaving the undying bird purgatory, the undying bird has already made plans. The undying bird's body is trapped here by the power of the phoenix and can't escape at all. So it used the inheritance to lure the right person here. After the undying bird took over the body, it used the body of the inheritor to leave the undying bird purgatory. As for the place to leave, the undying bird has already prepared it. It's in the outer layer of the Black Heart Sea of Fire. In the depths, there is a teleportation formation. The undying bird secretly used its blood essence to set it up a long time ago when it was suppressed. Crepe Star said, "Good. Then let's go to the outer layer now." Zhuowen nodded, and the two of them left this place. Soon, they left Crepe Star's cave residence. When Zhuowen came to the Flame Avenue again, he finally knew why the Phoenix had specially set up such a flame avenue here. Its purpose should be to suppress the undying bird's body. Moreover, it had also extracted a part of the undying bird's divine soul to guard the entrance of the inner layer, separating the divine soul and the body with the flame avenue. It was almost impossible for the undying bird to leave the undying bird purgatory. The only way was to seize someone's body. Unfortunately, the undying bird had chosen the wrong person. It dared to seize Zhuowen's body, which was seeking its own death. If the two of them wanted to go to the Black Heart Sea of Fire, they had to pass through the outer layer of the canyon gathering place. And even if it wasn't on the way, Zhuowen planned to go to the outer layer of the canyon gathering place. He had learned from Crepe Star that there were many powerful experts among the prisoners in the undying bird purgatory. Among them, there were 7 experts who were sky-reaching masters. Among the 7 sky-reaching masters, 1 was at the middle stage of sky-reaching masters, while the other 6 were slightly weaker. They were all at the early stage of sky-reaching masters. This was a very powerful force. He planned to release all the prisoners in the undying bird purgatory and then make trouble for the Phoenix people. When Zhuowen and Crepe Star arrived at the outer layer of the canyon, they immediately found that the canyon was much more heavily guarded than before. The two of them were stopped by 2 guards at the entrance of the canyon. If the 2 of you want to enter, you have to pay 500 Heavenly Law Origin crystals. The 2 guards could clearly feel the powerful aura emitted by Zhuowen and Crepe Star, so they didn't dare to go too far. Their tone was rather gentle. When I entered this canyon before, there was no such thing, right? Why do I have to pay Heavenly Law Origin crystals now?" Zhuowen frowned.